As the great Buddha once wisely said, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. When sadness weighs heavily on your heart and loneliness seems to echo through every corner of your mind, it is easy to believe that peace will only return when something outside changes, when someone arrives, when circumstances improve, when the pain disappears. But Buddhism teaches a deeper truth, that peace is not waiting for you in the world beyond. It is already within you, hidden beneath the noise of your suffering. The moments when you feel most broken are not a sign of weakness. They are an invitation to look inward, to discover the stillness that sadness cannot destroy. Today we will explore 12 Buddhist ways to calm the mind when you are sad or lonely, practices that turn silence into strength, solitude into wisdom, and sorrow into peace. 1. Observe the breath. Observe the moment. The very first and most gentle way to calm the mind is to return to your breath. Breathing is something so simple and constant that we often forget its power, yet it is the rhythm of life itself. From the moment you were born until your final day, the breath is always with you, carrying you through every experience. When sadness takes over, the mind often becomes restless and scattered. It jumps backward into the past, replaying regrets and painful memories, or it leaps forward into the future, creating fears and anxieties about what might happen. This endless movement of thought makes sadness feel heavier, almost unbearable. But the breath is different. It does not belong to the past or the future. It only exists here, right now, in this very moment. By sitting quietly and turning your full attention to the inhale and the exhale, you call your awareness back home to the present. As you breathe in, notice the cool air entering your body, filling your lungs, and giving you life. As you breathe out, notice the warmth leaving, as if you are releasing not only air but also tension and heaviness. With every inhale, remind yourself that this is a new moment, untouched by yesterday's pain and free from tomorrow's worry. With every exhale, let go of even a small piece of the burden you are carrying, as if each out-breath is carrying away a little of your sadness. Over time, this simple practice softens the intensity of your emotions. The breath is like a friend who is always near, patiently waiting for you to notice. You do not need special tools. You do not need to go anywhere. Your breath is available at any time, wherever you are. In Buddhism, the breath is seen as an anchor that steadies the boat of the mind when the waters of life become rough. By returning to it again and again, you discover that even in the middle of sorrow, there is a calm space within you. When practiced daily, this observation of the breath slowly trains the mind to stay present. And when the mind is present, sadness can no longer completely control you, because presence is stronger than despair. 2. Accept your feelings without judgment. One of the greatest sources of suffering is not the sadness itself, but the way we fight against it. When we feel lonely or heavy-hearted, the first reaction is often resistance. We tell ourselves we should not feel this way, that something is wrong with us, or that we must get rid of the emotion immediately. This inner struggle adds another layer of pain on top of what we are already experiencing. Buddhism teaches us that freedom begins not by pushing emotions away, but by accepting them with gentle awareness. To accept your feelings means to sit quietly with them, as you would sit with a guest who has come to your home. You do not slam the door in their face, nor do you let them rule over you. Instead, you allow them to enter, you acknowledge their presence, and you observe them without judgment. If sadness arises, simply say in your heart, "I feel sadness." If loneliness appears, whisper, "This is loneliness." By naming the feeling and giving it space, you break its grip over you. It is no longer something hidden and frightening. It becomes something observed and understood. This practice transforms your relationship with emotions. Instead of drowning in them, You begin to see them as waves on the surface of a vast ocean. The waves may be strong, but they do not define the ocean itself. In the same way, sadness is only a passing state. It does not define who you are. You are the one who observes it, not the sadness itself. When you stop judging your emotions as good or bad, right or wrong, you create space in which the heaviness begins to loosen. Acceptance does not mean that you enjoy the pain or that you resign yourself to it forever. It simply means you stop resisting what is already here. Resistance feeds suffering, while acceptance softens it. Imagine holding a tightly closed fist. You feel tension, strain, and discomfort, but when you open your hand, the tension disappears. In the same way, when you stop clenching against your feelings, your heart begins to relax. Over time, you will discover that sadness, when accepted, loses its sharp edge and becomes something you can sit with peacefully, knowing it will eventually pass. 3. Practice loving kindness toward yourself. When sadness or loneliness enters the heart, it often brings with it a cruel inner voice that whispers words of self-criticism. You may find yourself thinking, "I am not good enough. I am not worthy of love. Nobody cares about me." These harsh judgments add pain to pain, turning sadness into suffering. Buddhism teaches that one of the most powerful ways to heal this inner wound is through the practice of loving kindness, also known as metta. This practice is like learning to treat yourself with the same gentleness and care you would give to a close friend who is struggling. To begin, sit in a quiet place and place your hand softly on your chest. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. With each breath, silently repeat phrases of kindness directed toward yourself. May I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I be happy. May I live with ease. At first, the words may feel strange or even difficult to believe, especially if you are used to speaking harshly to yourself. But over time, these gentle phrases begin to soften the heart. The repetition plants seeds of compassion, and slowly, those seeds grow into a deep sense of warmth and acceptance within you. Loving kindness meditation is not about denying your pain or pretending everything is perfect. It is about acknowledging your suffering and responding with tenderness instead of judgment. Just as you would comfort a child who is crying by holding them close and speaking softly, you learn to comfort the wounded parts of yourself. This practice helps to remind you that sadness does not mean you are broken, it only means you are human. As you continue with metta, you will notice that the feeling of compassion expands outward. First, you send it to yourself, then you extend it to those you love, then to those you may not know well, and even to those with whom you struggle. Eventually, your heart grows wide enough to embrace all beings, but the foundation of this practice is always self-compassion. If you cannot show kindness to yourself, it is difficult to show genuine kindness to others. When you practice loving kindness, loneliness loses much of its power. Why? Because the warmth you were searching for outside begins to grow within you. The harsh voice of self-criticism is replaced by a gentle voice of encouragement, and you no longer feel abandoned because you realize you have always had yourself. Loving kindness becomes like an inner lamp, lighting your way even in the darkest moments. 4. Remember the impermanence of all things. When sadness or loneliness visits, the mind often tricks us into believing that these feelings will last forever. In the middle of pain, a day can feel endless, and a single night of loneliness can seem like it has no dawn. But one of the most important teachings in Buddhism is the truth of impermanence, known as anicca. This truth reminds us that nothing in life remains the same. Every thought, every emotion, every season, every relationship, every situation is always changing, whether we notice it or not. Think of the sky. Sometimes it is covered with heavy, dark clouds, and the rain seems endless. But no matter how dark the storm, The clouds eventually pass, and the blue sky reveals itself again. Your sadness is like those clouds. It may feel heavy and unmovable, but it cannot stay forever. It is only passing through. When you remember this, you stop believing the illusion that your suffering is permanent. You realize that just as joy has come and gone in your life before, sorrow too will fade in its own time. Reflect also on your past. Think about the most painful day you once experienced. At the time, you may have felt you would never recover, that the pain would always stay. But look at yourself now. You moved through it, you learned, you changed, and life continued. This is the law of impermanence working quietly in your life. Everything, both the joy and the sorrow, eventually transforms. Knowing this brings hope, because it reminds you that no matter how deep the sadness feels now, it will not always be this way. Impermanence does not only help you endure suffering, it also teaches you to cherish the moments of peace and joy while they are here. When you understand that everything changes, you begin to live with more presence, appreciating each smile, each gentle moment, and each simple breath, because you know they too will pass. Instead of clinging to happiness out of fear of losing it, you learn to enjoy it fully while it lasts, and instead of drowning in sadness, you remember that it too is temporary. This teaching is like a lantern in dark times. It shines a light that says, "Do not despair. This pain is not your forever. It is only your now." By remembering impermanence, you loosen your grip on sorrow. You no longer fight to hold on to what is gone, and you no longer fear what is coming. You live with the deep understanding that life is always moving, always changing, and within that constant change lies the promise of renewal. 5. Transform loneliness into solitude. Loneliness is one of the most painful emotions because it convinces you that you are cut off, separate, and invisible in the world. When you are lonely, it feels as though everyone else is connected, sharing laughter, love, and companionship, while you stand apart, unnoticed and unloved. This feeling can grow heavy in the heart and even lead to despair. But Buddhism teaches us that there is a profound difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is emptiness filled with longing. Solitude is fullness found within yourself. The shift from one to the other is not about changing where you are, but about changing how you see yourself in that moment. Think of solitude as sacred time, time to meet yourself again, to listen to the quiet voice of your heart without distraction, and to rest in your own presence. In solitude, you realize that you are never truly alone, because you are always with yourself. Most people run from being alone because they fear facing their own thoughts, yet solitude gives you the chance to befriend your mind. Instead of seeing silence as emptiness, you begin to see it as space, space to breathe, to reflect, and to simply be. When you transform loneliness into solitude, the feeling of being abandoned changes into an opportunity for self-discovery. You begin to see that solitude is not a punishment, but a gift. It allows you to explore who you are when no one else is watching, to ask yourself deep questions, to create, to meditate, to write, or to simply sit in stillness. This is why monks and practitioners throughout history have sought solitude, not because they wanted to suffer in loneliness, but because they knew solitude holds treasures that noise and company often hide. Think of a seed planted deep in the soil. At first, it looks like nothing is happening. The seed is buried, covered, unseen, but it is in this hidden solitude that the seed begins to grow roots, to draw strength, and to prepare to rise toward the light. In the same way, your times of solitude are like fertile soil for your soul. It may feel dark at first, but it is in this space that your inner strength takes root. You can begin this transformation by changing the way you speak to yourself. Instead of saying, "I am alone," try saying, "I am with myself." Instead of feeling that no one is here, Remind yourself that your own presence is here and that it is enough. As you learn to enjoy your own company, you will discover that the emptiness of loneliness slowly turns into the richness of solitude. You may find peace in reading, writing, meditating, walking, or simply drinking tea quietly, knowing that you are complete in that moment. The truth is, even when surrounded by people, you can still feel lonely if you are disconnected from yourself. And even when you are physically alone, you can feel whole if you are connected with yourself. That is the power of solitude. It heals loneliness by showing you that your own presence is enough. In this way, solitude becomes not something to escape, but something to embrace, a sacred time that strengthens your heart and prepares you to connect with others from a place of fullness rather than need. 6. Connect with nature. Sips calmness. When sadness and loneliness weigh on your heart, it is easy to feel as if you are trapped inside a cage of your own thoughts. The mind keeps circling around the same painful stories, and the walls of your inner world begin to feel smaller and smaller. In such moments, stepping outside and reconnecting with nature can be one of the most healing medicines. The Buddha himself found awakening under the Bodhi tree, and throughout his life, he taught and meditated in forests, gardens, and open fields. This was not by accident. Nature has a natural ability to soothe, to calm, and to remind us of truths that our restless minds often forget. When you walk among trees, sit beside a river, or watch the vast sky above you, you begin to see that life is always moving in cycles. The flowers bloom, and then they fade. The sun rises, and then it sets. The rain falls, and then the clouds drift away. Every part of nature is a living example of impermanence and renewal. When sadness convinces you that your pain will last forever, nature gently shows you that nothing in existence is fixed. Change is always happening, whether you notice it or not. Nature also dissolves the illusion of separation that fuels loneliness. When you feel alone, your mind tells you that you are cut off from the world, isolated like a single drop of water apart from the ocean. But if you sit quietly outside and truly observe, you realize that you are deeply connected to everything around you. The air you breathe has been touched by the leaves of trees. The water you drink has traveled through rivers, mountains, and clouds before reaching you. The food that nourishes your body came from the soil, the rain, and the sun. Every part of you is interwoven with the earth. To see this clearly is to feel a sense of belonging so deep that loneliness begins to loosen its grip. Even simple practices in nature can bring peace. Walking slowly on a quiet path and feeling the ground beneath your feet can remind you that you are supported. Sitting near a body of water and watching the ripples can calm your racing thoughts, teaching you that the mind, like water, becomes clear when it is still. Looking up at the night sky and seeing countless stars can remind you of the vastness of the universe, and suddenly your sadness feels smaller, less overwhelming when seen against the backdrop of infinite space. Nature does not judge you. The tree does not ask why you are sad, and the river does not demand that you explain your loneliness. They simply exist, offering their presence without conditions. In this way, nature becomes a mirror of Buddhist compassion. It accepts you exactly as you are. By placing yourself in that space of acceptance, you begin to absorb it into yourself. You realize that just as the earth holds the weight of mountains without complaint, it can also hold the weight of your sorrow without judgment. Sometimes, when sadness feels unbearable, the simplest act is to step outside, close your eyes, and take a deep breath of fresh air. That breath connects you to the trees, the sky, the wind, and all living beings who share the same air. In that moment, you are no longer alone. You are part of the great web of life. And as you open your eyes, you begin to see the world not as something separate from you, but as something that flows through you, supports you, and reminds you that peace is always near if you are willing to step into it. By making nature a regular part of your life, you create a practice of returning to calmness again and again. Just as monks walk barefoot on the earth to stay connected, you too can use the natural world as your temple. Whether it is a forest, a park, a garden, or even the simple act of watching the sunrise from your window, nature whispers the same truth. Nothing is permanent, everything is connected, and peace is always available when you open yourself to it. 7. Practice mindful walking. When sadness and loneliness take hold, the body often feels heavy and the mind restless. You may find yourself sitting in one place, lost in endless thoughts, or moving quickly without direction, as if trying to escape from your own feelings. In such moments, one of the most grounding practices in Buddhism is mindful walking. On the surface, walking may seem like a simple, ordinary act, but when practiced with full awareness, each step becomes a meditation, a way of returning to the present moment, and a path to inner peace. Mindful walking is more than just moving your feet. It is about bringing your whole attention to the act of walking, turning each step into a reminder that you are alive, that you are connected to the earth, and that peace is possible here and now. To begin, find a quiet place where you can walk slowly, perhaps a garden, a park, a hallway, or even a small space in your home. Stand still for a moment, take a deep breath, and then begin to walk gently, one step at a time. As your foot touches the ground, silently say to yourself, "I have arrived." As you take your next step, say, "I am home." These simple phrases remind you that peace is not found in rushing to the future or clinging to the past, but in fully arriving in the present moment. When you walk mindfully, you begin to notice details you usually ignore. The sensation of your foot touching the ground, the shifting of your body's weight, the rhythm of your breathing as it matches your pace. All of these bring you into deep contact with yourself. Even the sound of birds, the rustling of leaves, or the feeling of air against your skin becomes part of your meditation. Instead of being trapped in the storm of your thoughts, you anchor yourself to the reality of the present. This practice is especially powerful for loneliness because it reminds you that you are not floating through life disconnected. Each step connects you directly to the earth. You can imagine that with every step, you are being held by the ground, supported by the same earth that has carried countless beings before you. You may feel small in your sadness, but with each mindful step, you realize that you are part of something vast, steady, and unshakable. Walking meditation also helps release the tension of sadness from your body. When you feel down, your body often mirrors your emotions. You may slump, tighten your shoulders, or move with heaviness. But when you walk slowly and consciously, breathing with each step, your body begins to loosen, your chest opens, and your energy starts to flow again. This physical shift has a powerful effect on your mind. What once felt like a cage begins to feel like an open path, reminding you that movement and change are always possible. The beauty of mindful walking is that it can be practiced anywhere and at any time. You do not need a meditation cushion, a special room, or even silence. You can practice it while walking to work, moving through your home, or strolling in nature. Each step becomes an opportunity to return to yourself. Even if your mind wanders back to sadness, you gently bring it back with the next step, again and again, until walking itself becomes a form of healing. In Buddhism, mindful walking is not separate from life. It is life. Every step is seen as a miracle because it reminds you that you are alive, that you are here, and that you have the gift of this moment. And when sadness tells you that nothing matters, mindful walking shows you that even the simplest act, placing one foot in front of the other, can be filled with purpose and peace. Through mindful walking, you learn an important truth. You do not need to run from your sadness or force it away. You only need to walk with it gently, step by step, until the heaviness begins to lift. In this way, every step becomes an act of freedom, an act of peace, and a reminder that even in times of loneliness, you are never truly alone, because the earth itself is always walking with you. 8. Let go of the stories in your mind. One of the greatest causes of human suffering is not the actual pain we experience, but the endless stories we create around it. When sadness and loneliness appear, the mind does not stop at the raw feeling. It begins to build an entire narrative. It says, "I am always alone. Nobody understands me. My life will never change. Happiness is not meant for me. Things will only get worse." These thoughts seem convincing because they repeat over and over, weaving themselves into a pattern that feels like truth. But in reality, they are only stories, illusions created by the mind in its attempt to make sense of discomfort. Buddhism teaches us to see the mind for what it truly is, a storyteller. The mind is constantly weaving together fragments of memory, imagination, fear, and desire, producing a stream of thoughts that feels real but is not always grounded in truth. When you are sad, the mind clings to painful memories and exaggerates them, making them appear larger than life. When you are lonely, it projects an endless future of emptiness, convincing you that things will never improve. Yet if you look deeply, you will notice that these are not realities but mental constructions, like clouds passing through the sky. They appear solid from a distance, but when you try to grasp them, they dissolve. The problem is not that thoughts arise. That is natural. The problem comes when we believe them without question. When the mind whispers, "You are unloved," and you accept it as absolute truth, it becomes a prison. When it says, "Your pain will never end," and you hold on to that story, you sink deeper into despair. But the teachings of the Buddha remind us that we are not our thoughts. Just as the sky is never stained by the passing clouds, your true self is never truly defined by the passing stories of your mind. To let go of these stories, the first step is awareness. The moment you notice your mind telling a painful story, pause. Do not fight it, but do not feed it either. Simply say to yourself, "This is a story my mind is creating. It is not who I am." By naming it, you create a distance between yourself and the thought. You shift from being the prisoner of the thought to being the observer of it. In that space of observation, the thought begins to lose its power. Imagine your mind as a stage, and your thoughts as actors performing a play. Some of these actors are loud, dramatic, and full of emotion. They demand your attention and try to convince you that their story is real. But as the audience, you have a choice. You can get lost in the drama, crying and suffering along with the actors, or you can simply sit back and watch, knowing that it is only a performance. The more you practice, the more you realize that you do not have to believe every thought that walks across the stage of your mind. Mindfulness meditation is one of the most powerful tools for this practice. When you sit quietly and observe your breath, thoughts will naturally arise. Some may be neutral, but others will carry sadness or fear. Instead of chasing them or pushing them away, you simply notice them thinking. You return to the breath. Over time, this trains the mind to see thoughts for what they are, temporary events, not permanent truths. Just like waves that rise and fall in the ocean, thoughts arise and disappear in the mind. You are not the wave, you are the ocean. Another way to release these stories is to test them gently. When a painful thought arises, ask yourself, is this absolutely true? Do I know for certain that this will always be the case? Most of the time, you will realize the answer is no. For example, when your mind says, "I will always be lonely," pause and ask, is that true? Haven't there been times when I was surrounded by love and care? Isn't it possible that life could change again? By questioning the thought, you weaken its grip. You begin to see it not as a fact, but as an assumption, a story that the mind has chosen to tell, but that does not have to be believed. Buddhism also reminds us of the law of impermanence. Just as all emotions change, so do thoughts. No matter how loud and convincing a story feels in this moment, it will eventually fade. Think of how many different thoughts you have had in a single day. Some made you anxious, some made you smile, and some you barely noticed. None of them lasted forever. The same is true of the stories around your sadness. They too will pass if you do not hold on to them. It is also important to remember that the mind often exaggerates. When you feel lonely, it may tell you that you are completely unloved, that nobody cares about you at all. But if you reflect more carefully, you may realize that there are people who care, even if they do not always show it in the way you expect. Or the mind may say, "My future will be empty forever." But how can the mind know the future? The future has not yet happened. It is only a projection. By recognizing these exaggerations, you learn to step back and say, "This is only my mind imagining. It is not reality." One practice you can try when caught in a painful story is visualization. Imagine holding the thought in your hand as if it were a leaf. Then picture yourself placing that leaf onto a flowing river. Watch as the river carries it away, slowly but steadily, until it disappears from sight. Each time a painful story arises, you repeat the practice, placing it on the river and letting it go. This visualization helps train the mind to release thoughts instead of clinging to them. The more you let go of these stories, the more space opens within you for peace. Sadness and loneliness may still visit, but they no longer consume you because you no longer fuel them with endless narratives. Instead of thinking, "I am broken," you see, "This is sadness arising in me." Instead of believing, "I am unworthy," you recognize, "This is only a thought, not the truth." In this way, you transform the relationship you have with your own mind. You stop being its victim and become its master. Over time, you may even begin to feel gratitude for this practice, because it shows you a deeper truth, that you are far greater than the thoughts in your mind. You are the awareness behind them, the space in which they arise and dissolve. That awareness is untouched by stories, untouched by loneliness, and untouched by sadness. It is calm, vast, and unshaken, like the clear sky that remains unchanged, no matter how many clouds pass through it. So the next time sadness brings with it a flood of painful thoughts, remember they are only stories. You do not have to believe them. You do not have to fight them. You can simply watch them appear, let them drift away, and return to the present moment. The more you practice this, the freer you will feel, and in that freedom, loneliness loses its grip, sadness loses its weight, and you return to the peace that has always been waiting within you. 9. Practice gratitude for what remains. When sadness and loneliness settle into the heart, the mind has a way of turning its gaze only toward what is missing. You notice what you have lost, what is absent, what others seem to have that you do not. In such times, your inner vision narrows like a tunnel, showing you only emptiness, lack, and sorrow. The joy that once came from simple things, your breath, the food on your table, the sunlight warming your face, seems invisible. Gratitude is the gentle yet powerful practice that begins to widen that tunnel of vision. It shifts your attention from what is absent to what is still present, from emptiness to abundance, from despair to quiet peace. Buddhism does not treat gratitude as a shallow trick or a way of pretending that everything is fine. Instead, gratitude is seen as a profound form of mindfulness. It is the recognition of the blessings that already surround you, the ability to see clearly what your restless mind often overlooks. The Buddha taught that dissatisfaction, dukkha, arises when the mind clings to what it does not have or resists what it does have. Gratitude directly heals this by teaching the mind to rest in appreciation, to soften its endless craving, and to discover peace in what already exists. Imagine two people walking through the same forest. One sees only thorns, insects, and obstacles. The other notices the bird song, the shade of the trees, the fresh air filling the lungs. The forest is the same, but the experience is completely different because of where attention is placed. Gratitude is this shift in attention. It does not deny the thorns, but it chooses not to ignore the flowers. When sadness whispers, "Your life is empty," gratitude responds, "My heart is still beating. I am still breathing. I still have moments, however small, that carry beauty." When loneliness says, "Nobody is here for you," gratitude reminds you, "The air is here, the sky is here, the earth is beneath my feet. Life itself is with me in this moment." This shift does not erase sadness, but it surrounds it with perspective. Instead of being swallowed whole by despair, you begin to notice the quiet treasures that remain. One powerful way to practice gratitude is through daily reflection. At the end of the day, sit quietly and name 3 things you are grateful for. They do not need to be extraordinary. In fact, the more ordinary they are, the deeper the practice becomes. Perhaps you are grateful for the cup of tea you drank, for the smile of a stranger, or for the comfort of your bed. By writing these down or speaking them aloud, you train the mind to search for goodness, even in small details. Over time, you will notice that your perspective begins to change. Instead of seeing only absence, you begin to see presence everywhere. Another way is to practice gratitude in the moment. For example, when sadness makes your chest heavy, pause and notice your breath. Whisper to yourself, "Thank you for this breath." When you eat, take a moment before the first bite to reflect on the countless hands that made this meal possible, the farmers who grew the food, the rain and sun that nourished the soil, the people who transported it, and the hands that cooked it. Gratitude transforms a simple meal into a sacred connection with the entire universe. Suddenly, even loneliness feels less sharp because you realize that you are supported by countless invisible threads of interconnection. Gratitude is also a teacher of impermanence. When you practice it, you realize that everything you enjoy, your health, your loved ones, your possessions, is temporary. At first, this may sound sad, but in reality it deepens your appreciation. You begin to cherish what you have while it is here, instead of ignoring it or taking it for granted. The cup of tea becomes more precious because you know it will soon be gone. The smile of a loved one shines brighter because you know it is fleeting. Gratitude teaches you to hold life gently, to savor it in its passing, instead of constantly chasing after what is not here. In Buddhism, gratitude is not limited to what is pleasant. It also includes appreciation for difficulties, because challenges are often the greatest teachers. When you reflect on a painful experience, you may find that it shaped you, gave you strength, or opened your heart in ways comfort never could. This does not mean you must enjoy suffering, but it means you can recognize the wisdom it leaves behind. Even in sadness, gratitude can arise for the lessons it carries, the way it teaches you compassion for others who suffer, the way it shows you the depth of your heart, the way it brings you back to what is truly important. Consider this: when you are lonely, you feel the ache of absence so strongly that it may consume your whole being. But loneliness itself can awaken gratitude for connection when it returns. Without knowing the pain of being alone, we might not fully appreciate the gift of togetherness. Gratitude allows you to see loneliness not only as an enemy, but also as a reminder of how deeply you value love and companionship. It turns even sorrow into a teacher. The practice of gratitude also loosens the grip of comparison. Much of sadness and loneliness comes from looking at others and thinking, "They have more than me. They are happier. They are loved while I am forgotten. But gratitude shifts the focus from what others have to what you have. It reminds you that your path is unique, that your blessings are different but no less meaningful. When you count your gifts, comparison fades and peace quietly enters. Even scientific studies today confirm what Buddhism has taught for centuries, that gratitude rewires the brain, calming the nervous system, reducing depression, and strengthening resilience. When you practice gratitude, your body releases chemicals that lift your mood, your heart rate steadies, and your mind feels lighter. But beyond science, gratitude carries a spiritual truth. It connects you to the flow of life itself. When you say thank you, you align yourself with abundance instead of lack, with connection instead of separation. If your sadness feels too heavy to find gratitude for big things, begin small. Be grateful for the breath that carries you from moment to moment. Be grateful for the ground holding you up. Be grateful for the light that reaches your eyes each morning. As you practice, gratitude grows stronger, like a muscle. What began as noticing small details eventually expands into a constant awareness of life's blessings, big and small. And here is the beautiful paradox. When you begin to practice gratitude for what you already have, more peace naturally flows into your life. Gratitude does not change your circumstances immediately. It changes your vision. And when your vision changes, your experience of life transforms. The same day that once felt empty, now feels full. The same life that once seemed barren, now reveals richness everywhere. Gratitude turns what you have into enough, and loneliness into an opportunity to connect more deeply with the simple gift of being alive. So when sadness tells you that all is lost, remember to look again. Notice the breath, the body, the warmth of the sun, the food on your plate, the lessons of your journey. Give thanks, not because everything is perfect, but because even in imperfection, beauty remains. Gratitude is not about denying your pain. It is about refusing to let pain blind you to the goodness that still surrounds you. In this way, gratitude becomes not just a practice, but a way of life. Each day, it pulls you gently back from despair and opens your eyes to the blessings you carry, often unnoticed. And the more you live in gratitude, the less room sadness and loneliness have to dominate you, because your heart becomes full of appreciation, full of presence, and full of peace. 10. Serve others to heal yourself. Sadness and loneliness often turn the mind inward in a way that magnifies suffering. You may find yourself thinking again and again about your pain, your emptiness, your isolation, until the world feels small and suffocating. It is as if the heart has closed in on itself, creating a prison where you are both the prisoner and the guard. Yet one of the most profound teachings of Buddhism reminds us that compassion is the key that unlocks that prison door. When you turn your energy towards serving others, when you shift from self-absorption to selfless giving, something extraordinary happens. The weight of your suffering lightens, and your heart begins to heal. At first, this may sound paradoxical. You might think, how can I serve others when I can barely carry my own sadness? Shouldn't I fix myself first before giving to anyone else? But the truth is, giving itself is part of the healing. When you are lonely, you crave connection. When you are sad, you long for meaning. Service provides both. It connects you to others through kindness, and it gives your pain a purpose. Instead of asking, why am I suffering? You begin to ask, how can I use my experience to ease the suffering of someone else? That shift alone is powerful enough to change the direction of your heart. Think about a time when you did something kind for another person, a smile to a stranger, a word of comfort to a friend, or even helping someone carry a heavy bag. In that moment, how did you feel? Even if only briefly, you probably noticed a warmth rising inside you, a sense of connection, a feeling of being part of something bigger than yourself. That is the healing power of service. You are no longer trapped in the story of your own sadness. You are actively writing a new story of compassion, one where your existence matters not only to you but to others as well. In Buddhism, compassion karusa is not only a virtue but also a path to liberation. The Buddha taught that when we ease the suffering of others, we also ease our own, because at the deepest level there is no separation between self and other. We are all part of the same fabric of existence. Just as the left hand naturally helps the right when it is injured, so too does the awakened heart respond to the pain of others. By serving others, you are not abandoning yourself, you are remembering your interconnectedness, which dissolves the illusion of loneliness. Service does not always require grand acts. You do not need to build a school, donate a fortune, or solve the world's problems to heal through giving. In fact, some of the most powerful acts of service are the smallest ones, the ones that seem ordinary but ripple outward in ways you may never see. Listening deeply to someone who needs to talk, cooking a meal for a neighbor, offering patience instead of anger, or simply sending a silent wish of well-being to a stranger, each of these is service. And each of these shifts the focus of your mind, from your inner pain to the shared humanity around you. Consider this: loneliness tells you that you are disconnected, that you do not belong. But when you serve others, you create threads of connection. Even if you are a stranger to the one you help, the act itself ties your lives together in a moment of compassion. And those moments accumulate, slowly weaving a net of belonging that catches you when you fall into despair. Service proves to your own heart that you are not useless, not invisible. You are capable of bringing light into someone else's life, even in the smallest ways. There is also a hidden wisdom here. Sadness often makes us feel powerless, as if we cannot control anything in our lives. But service restores a sense of agency. You may not be able to change your emotions instantly, but you can change how you show up for others. You can choose to smile, to share, to give, to help, and with every act of service, you reclaim a little of your power. You remind yourself that even in sorrow, you can still be a source of goodness. Buddhist monks often practice dana, or generosity, as a daily discipline. They go on alms rounds, not only to receive, but also to offer others the opportunity to give. This practice is built on the truth that giving heals both the giver and the receiver. When you give, your heart expands. When you receive, your gratitude deepens. In both directions, compassion flows and suffering lessens. You do not need to be a monk to practice this. You can incorporate service into your daily life in whatever way fits your circumstances. If you are sad and lonely, start small. Call someone who might also be lonely and ask how they are. Volunteer a little of your time at a local shelter, community center, or even online spaces where people seek support. Offer to water someone's plants, to babysit for a tired parent, or to check in on an elderly neighbor. Each of these acts may seem minor, but to the one receiving them, they may mean everything, and to you they become moments of healing. There is also a subtle but profound effect of service. It helps you see your own suffering in perspective. When you listen to the struggles of others, you realize you are not alone in your pain. Everyone carries burdens. This recognition is not meant to dismiss your sadness, but to place it within the greater truth of human life. You begin to see that suffering is universal, and this shared reality connects you deeply to others. Suddenly, your loneliness feels less like isolation and more like a doorway into compassion. Furthermore, service teaches humility and gratitude. When you serve someone, you often discover that even in your sadness, you have something to give: your time, your presence, your attention. This realization itself is healing, because sadness often convinces you that you have nothing left, that you are empty. Service proves otherwise. It shows you that your heart still has something to offer, that your existence still matters. And as you give, you may find yourself receiving unexpected blessings in return. A smile, a word of thanks, or even a new friendship. Another aspect of service is that it creates meaning out of pain. Many people who have suffered deeply find that their healing begins when they use their experiences to help others. A person who has walked through grief may comfort someone else who is grieving. A person who has struggled with loneliness may create spaces where others feel less alone. In this way, your suffering is not wasted. It becomes fuel for compassion, wisdom, and service. What once felt like a curse transforms into a gift that allows you to ease the burdens of others. From a Buddhist perspective, serving others is not just about kindness, it is about dissolving the illusion of the self. When you act with compassion, you stop clinging to the idea that your pain is separate, unique, or isolating. You begin to see that your well-being and the well-being of others are intertwined. As Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "The moment you open your heart to others, you open your heart to yourself." So when sadness and loneliness tell you to turn inward, to close the doors of your heart, choose instead to open them. Step outside of your own suffering, even for a moment, and ask, "How can I serve today?" The answer may be as small as offering a kind word, or as large as dedicating your time to a cause. What matters is not the scale of the act, but the intention behind it. The intention to relieve suffering, to bring light where there is darkness. And here lies the beautiful truth. The more you serve others, the more you heal yourself. Compassion becomes a mirror. The kindness you give reflects back into your own heart, filling the emptiness of loneliness with connection, softening the sharp edges of sadness with purpose. Service is not about ignoring your own pain. It is about transforming it by sharing love with the world. In the end, service is a reminder that you are never powerless, never completely alone, and never without purpose. Even in your darkest moments, you can still be a light for someone else. And in being that light, you will discover that your own path becomes brighter, your burden lighter, and your heart more at peace. 11. Contemplate interconnectedness. One of the deepest roots of sadness and loneliness is the belief that you are separate, that you stand apart from others, from the world, and even from life itself. When loneliness takes hold, it whispers, "You are alone, nobody sees you, nobody cares, you are cut off, unworthy and forgotten." These thoughts tighten the heart like a knot, creating the illusion of isolation. Yet Buddhism teaches something radically different, the truth of interconnectedness, or interbeing. This teaching reveals that you are never truly alone, because everything in existence is linked together in an unbroken web of life. Interconnectedness means that your life is not independent, not self-contained, not separate. From the moment you were born until this very breath, your existence has been supported by countless conditions, countless beings, countless unseen hands. Every bite of food you have eaten has come from soil, rain, sun, farmers and workers. Every breath you take is possible because of trees and plants that give oxygen. Even your body is a gathering of the universe. Your bones built from the minerals of the earth, your blood carrying the salt of the seas, your cells nourished by the energy of the sun. To exist at all is to be part of everything. The truth is, you have never been separate, you only forget. When sadness says, "Nobody is with me," pause and reflect. The air itself is with you, entering your lungs at this very moment. The ground is beneath you, holding you up without question. The water you drank this morning was once part of clouds floating in the sky, rivers flowing across the earth, oceans touched by moonlight. You are not disconnected, you are woven into the fabric of existence. This understanding is not just philosophical, it is deeply practical in healing loneliness. Because loneliness thrives on the illusion of separation. When you deeply contemplate interconnection, loneliness begins to dissolve. You realize you belong not only to your family or community, but to the earth, the sky, the stars, and the entire universe. You are a child of life itself, supported in every moment by countless causes and conditions. Thich Nhat Hanh, a great Buddhist teacher, often used the image of a piece of paper to explain interbeing. If you look at the paper, you might see only a sheet, but if you look deeply, you see the sunshine, because without the sun, the tree could not grow. You see the rain, because without the rain, the tree could not live. You see the logger, the factory, the workers, the teacher who taught you to read, and the parents who gave birth to you. In one piece of paper, the entire universe is present. In the same way, when you look at yourself deeply, you see that you too contain the universe. Your being is not separate, but a gathering of everything. Contemplating interconnectedness also shifts how you see suffering. When you feel lonely, you may think your pain is unique, that nobody else could understand it, but interbeing teaches that suffering too is shared. Every human being knows loss, longing, fear, and sadness. When you suffer, you are not alone in your experience. You are connected to countless others who also walk through pain. This awareness can soften the edge of loneliness. Instead of asking, "Why me?" you realize this is part of the human journey, and I am walking it with others. Compassion naturally grows from this realization, because when you see your pain reflected in others, your heart opens to theirs, and connection arises. This practice of contemplating interconnectedness can be done anywhere. Sit quietly and reflect on one simple thing in front of you: a glass of water, a piece of fruit, even your own hand. Ask yourself, what conditions made this possible? When you hold a piece of fruit, you can see the seed, the soil, the rain, the sun, the farmer, the transport, the store, and finally your own hands holding it. The fruit is not just a fruit, it is the earth, the sky, and the labor of countless beings. In this way you train your mind to see the invisible threads that connect everything. Interconnectedness also teaches humility. You realize that your life is not built by you alone. Without the love, labor, and sacrifices of others, both known and unknown, you would not survive a single day. This understanding can transform loneliness into gratitude. You are never truly unsupported, because even in your darkest hour, the earth continues to turn, the sun continues to shine, the rain continues to fall, and life continues to nourish you. There is another layer to this teaching that is deeply liberating. Just as you are connected to all that supports you, you are also connected to all that suffers. This might sound heavy, but it is actually a doorway to compassion. When you contemplate the interconnectedness of suffering, you realize that your loneliness links you to millions of others feeling the same. You are not an isolated island of sadness. You are part of a great ocean of human experience. And just as your suffering is connected to others, your healing, your kindness, and your compassion ripple outward, touching lives you may never meet. This is why in Buddhism, meditation is not only for personal peace, but also for the world. When you cultivate compassion, when you heal your own sadness, you contribute to the healing of others, because your actions, words, and energy affect those around you. The simple act of smiling at a stranger, speaking kindly, or being patient in a moment of anger can ripple through the web of life, creating effects far beyond what you see. Interconnectedness reminds you that you matter, not in isolation, but as part of the whole. For those who feel unbearably lonely, this teaching can be revolutionary. Loneliness says, "I do not belong anywhere." Interconnectedness answers, "You belong everywhere. You belong to the earth that holds you, to the air that fills you, to the sun that warms you, and to the countless beings who share this journey of life. Even when no human sits beside you, you are not alone. The birds outside your window, the stars in the night sky, the trees that breathe with you, they are companions in existence. And when you remember this, the sense of separation begins to dissolve. Consider also how interconnectedness transforms your sense of identity. You may think, I am me, separate from you, separate from the world. But when you look deeply, you realize that what you call me is already made of not me elements. Your body carries your parents, your ancestors, your culture, your teachers, the food you ate, the air you breathe. There is no isolated self. There is only a flow of life, expressing itself in infinite forms. This realization softens the ego, the sense of being cut off, and replaces it with belonging. Contemplating into being can be done as a daily meditation. Sit quietly, breathe deeply, and reflect, I am connected. This breath connects me to the trees. This food connects me to the earth. This body connects me to my ancestors. This moment connects me to all beings who are alive now. The more you practice, the more real this becomes, not just as an idea, but as a felt experience. And in that experience, loneliness loses its hold, because you see clearly that you have never been separate. Even science echoes this truth. Modern physics tells us that everything is energy, constantly interacting, constantly influencing one another. Ecology shows us that every organism is part of a system, depending on countless others for survival. Neuroscience shows us that humans are wired for connection, that compassion and cooperation are natural. What Buddhism has taught for centuries is now reflected in the discoveries of science, that life is a web, not a chain of separate pieces. The beauty of this truth is that it gives both comfort and responsibility. Comfort, because you realize you are never truly alone. Responsibility, because your actions, even small ones, affect the whole. When you speak kindly, you add to the harmony of the web. When you choose compassion, you strengthen the bonds of humanity. Your life is not insignificant. It is a thread in the great tapestry of existence. So the next time loneliness whispers its painful lies, pause and look deeply. Notice the breath filling your chest, the ground beneath your feet, the light entering your eyes. Reflect on the countless beings, human and non-human, who make your existence possible. Let gratitude rise for the invisible support you constantly receive, and then extend that awareness outward, remembering that just as you are supported, you too can support others. To contemplate interconnectedness is to heal the wound of separation at the root of loneliness. It is to remember that you are not a single drop lost in the vastness, you are part of the vastness itself. And when you know this, a deep peace enters. You no longer fear being alone, because you see clearly that you never truly were. You are life itself, connected to all things, supported by all things, and belonging to all things. 12. Return to silence and stillness. There comes a point when words, thoughts, and even practices must give way to something deeper. Silence. Silence is often misunderstood. Many people see silence as emptiness, as nothingness, as a void to be feared. We live in a world filled with noise, music, conversations, television, notifications, endless chatter in the mind, so much so that silence feels uncomfortable, even threatening. Yet Buddhism teaches that silence is not empty. Silence is full. It is full of peace, full of presence, full of wisdom. And when sadness and loneliness overwhelm you, one of the most powerful medicines you can offer yourself is the gift of returning to silence and stillness. Why is silence so healing? Because silence reveals what noise conceals. The noise of your mind tells endless stories. I am alone. I am unworthy. Things will never change. The noise of the world demands your attention, pulling you in 1,000 directions. But silence cuts through all of this. In silence, you realize that behind the storm of thoughts, there is a vast space of awareness that is calm, steady, and unbroken. That space is your true self, untouched by loneliness, untouched by sadness. It has always been there, waiting for you beneath the surface of noise. Stillness is the natural state of the mind when it is not pulled by past regrets or future fears. Imagine a lake. When the wind blows, the surface is disturbed, rippling with waves. But when the wind ceases, the water returns to stillness, reflecting the sky perfectly. Your mind is the same. When stirred by thoughts, emotions, and restlessness, it feels chaotic. But when you return to stillness, it becomes clear, able to reflect truth as it really is. Sadness and loneliness may still appear, but they no longer distort your vision. You see them as passing clouds, not as the essence of your being. How do you return to silence and stillness? The first step is to stop running. Most of us run from silence because it feels uncomfortable. When you are sad, you may fill the space with distractions, scrolling endlessly on your phone, filling every moment with noise, surrounding yourself with constant activity, because silence forces you to face what you feel. Yet the irony is that healing comes not from running, but from sitting still with yourself. To sit quietly in silence is to say, I am willing to be with myself exactly as I am. That is an act of courage and compassion. You can practice this by setting aside a few minutes each day to simply sit without doing anything. Close your eyes, breathe gently, and let yourself be. Thoughts will arise. Feelings may surface. Do not fight them, and do not follow them. Let them come and go, like waves rising and falling on the surface of the ocean. Beneath those waves, there is always stillness. With practice, you begin to rest in that deeper stillness, even as thoughts continue to move above. Silence is also about listening, not to words, but to life itself. When you sit in stillness, you may begin to hear things you never noticed before, the sound of your breath, the beating of your heart, the hum of life all around you. You realize that silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of awareness. In that awareness, you feel connected, whole, and at peace. Buddhism values silence because it is in silence that wisdom arises. The Buddha himself attained enlightenment, not through endless debate, but through sitting silently under the Bodhi tree. Great teachers have always sought silence in order to see clearly. In stillness, you begin to notice the truth of impermanence, the arising and passing of thoughts, the interconnection of all things. These truths are not intellectual, they are felt directly when you rest in silence. For someone struggling with sadness and loneliness, silence can feel intimidating at first. The mind may rebel, filling the quiet with noise. But if you remain patient, silence becomes a friend. In fact, it becomes the most faithful friend, because silence is always available to you, wherever you are, at any time. Unlike people, silence never abandons you. Unlike distractions, silence does not exhaust you. It simply waits, gently, until you are ready to rest in it. Think of silence as a soft blanket for the soul. When the world feels harsh, silence wraps around you, calming the nervous system, slowing the heartbeat, easing the breath. In silence, you do not need to perform, to prove, or to explain. You can simply be. And in that being, you remember that you are enough. Stillness also teaches you that peace is not something you must chase. Many people believe they must fix everything in their lives before they can feel calm, but stillness shows you that peace is already here, beneath the noise. You do not have to earn it. You only have to stop long enough to notice it. Even if sadness remains, even if loneliness lingers, stillness gives you a place of refuge where you are not consumed by those feelings. You sit in the center of the storm, untouched by its winds. There are many ways to cultivate silence and stillness in daily life. Meditation is the most direct path, sitting quietly, focusing on the breath, letting thoughts pass. But you can also practice silence in small ways, turning off the phone for a while, walking in nature without headphones, eating a meal slowly without distraction, or simply pausing in the middle of your day to take 3 conscious breaths. These moments of silence accumulate, creating a habit of stillness that you can carry with you even into noisy environments. Silence can also be shared. Sitting in quiet with others, without the need for conversation, can create a deep sense of connection. In fact, sometimes silence communicates more than words. A silent presence can say, "I am here with you," more powerfully than any speech. For those who feel lonely, sitting quietly with someone else in mindfulness can dissolve the sense of separation and bring a profound feeling of belonging. But even when you are physically alone, silence and stillness remind you that you are never truly alone, because life itself is always with you. The silence of the night sky, the stillness of the trees, the calm of your own breath. These are companions, steady and constant. To sit in silence is to sit with the universe itself. Over time, silence changes the way you experience sadness. At first, sadness may roar like thunder in the mind, but when you sit quietly, you notice that beneath the thunder there is always stillness. That stillness does not reject the sadness. It simply holds it. The more you practice, the more you realize that you are not the sadness itself. You are the stillness that notices it. And that realization is profoundly freeing. Loneliness, too, begins to lose its grip in silence, because when you rest in stillness, you discover that the self you thought was alone is not the real self. The real self is awareness itself, vast and connected, holding all experiences. That awareness is never lonely, because it is not separate. It is part of everything. In silence, you realize your true home is not in the company of others, but in the boundless presence of your own being. So when life feels heavy, when sadness clouds your heart and loneliness makes you feel abandoned, return to silence and stillness. Sit quietly, breathe gently, and allow yourself to simply be. At first, the mind may resist, but with patience, the silence will open like a door, leading you back to peace. In that stillness, you will remember what has always been true. Beneath the noise of sorrow, there is a calm center within you, unshaken and whole. That center is your refuge, your true self, and your eternal companion. To end, consider this: sound comes and goes, but silence remains. Movement rises and falls, but stillness endures. Thoughts appear and disappear, but awareness is always present. When you rest in that silence, that stillness, you rest in your true nature. And in that place, sadness cannot drown you, loneliness cannot define you, because you have discovered the infinite peace that lies beneath all things. 13. Cultivate the middle path in times of sadness and loneliness. When we are sad or lonely, the mind often swings like a pendulum between extremes. On one side, there is despair, falling into hopelessness, drowning in thoughts of worthlessness, sinking deeper into isolation. On the other side, there is denial, trying to run away from feelings, distracting ourselves endlessly, pretending to be happy while secretly breaking inside. Both extremes only deepen suffering. Despair drowns us in heaviness, and denial forces us into constant running. Neither allows true healing. The Buddha discovered that peace is not found in extremes but in balance. He called this balance the middle path, a way of living and thinking that avoids both excessive indulgence and harsh self-denial, a way that avoids both drowning in emotions and escaping them completely. Cultivating the middle path in times of sadness and loneliness is about learning to walk gently between these extremes. It means you do not deny your sadness, but you also do not let it consume your whole identity. You acknowledge loneliness, but you do not let it define your worth. You hold your pain with compassion, while also making space for light. Think of a tightrope walker moving carefully across a rope. If they lean too far left or right, they will fall. Their safety lies in balance, in small adjustments, in constant awareness of their center. In the same way, your healing lies in balance. When sadness arises, the middle path teaches you to feel it fully, without exaggerating it into a permanent truth. When loneliness arises, the middle path teaches you to sit with it gently, without falling into the story that you are unloved or forgotten forever. To cultivate this path, you must begin with awareness. Notice when your mind swings toward despair. Nothing will ever change. I will always be alone. Notice also when it swings toward denial. I am fine. I don't need anyone. I'll just keep busy and ignore this feeling. Both are signs of imbalance. The middle path is not about forcing yourself into neutrality, but about returning to the center again and again. You breathe, you acknowledge the feeling, and you remind yourself, this too is part of life. I will not cling to it, and I will not run from it. I will walk with it. This balance also applies to how you treat yourself during difficult times. In sadness, one extreme is to indulge the pain endlessly, constantly feeding the mind with negative thoughts, isolating yourself, refusing to take any steps toward healing. The other extreme is to punish yourself for being sad, telling yourself to get over it, pushing yourself harshly, or criticizing yourself for not being stronger. The middle path says, treat yourself with compassion, but also with discipline. It encourages you to rest when you need rest, but not to sink endlessly into idleness. It invites you to acknowledge your pain, but also to take gentle steps toward what nourishes you, walking in nature, practicing mindfulness, reaching out for connection, showing kindness to others. In Buddhism, the middle path is also the path of moderation. When lonely, you may feel tempted to fill every space with distractions, endless social media, constant noise, or shallow relationships that only deepen the emptiness afterward. Or you may withdraw completely, refusing all connection, shutting yourself away. The middle path reminds you that healing lies between these extremes. You do not need to isolate completely, nor do you need to drown yourself in endless activity. Instead, you create a rhythm, a balance of solitude and connection, silence and conversation, rest and activity. This rhythm becomes medicine because it prevents the mind from falling into imbalance. Cultivating the middle path also means seeing sadness and loneliness in their true proportion. The mind often exaggerates pain, making it feel larger than life. But if you step back, you notice that while sadness is present, so too are many other things: your breath, your body, your environment, your blessings. The middle path helps you hold pain without letting it erase everything else. It teaches you to say, yes, sadness is here, but joy is also possible. Yes, loneliness is here, but connection is also possible. This balanced view prevents you from drowning in hopelessness while still honoring your truth. You can practice this balance through meditation. Sit quietly, breathe, and observe your feelings without judgment. Notice when the mind swings toward despair, perhaps replaying painful memories or imagining a dark future. Gently bring it back to the breath. Notice when the mind swings toward denial, perhaps wanting to escape into distraction. Gently bring it back again. Each time you return, you strengthen the ability to walk in balance. The meditation itself becomes a rehearsal for the middle path. The mind wanders to extremes, and you return to center. Again and again, you practice balance until it becomes your natural way of living. The middle path is not just about handling emotions, it is also about how you live daily life. When you are sad, you may neglect your body, eating too little, eating too much, or sleeping excessively, or you may push your body too hard, trying to burn away the sadness. Both are extremes. The middle path says nourish your body with enough food, rest and movement, without falling into either neglect or obsession. In this way, balance heals both mind and body. Even in relationships, the middle path is wisdom. Loneliness may drive you to cling desperately to others, demanding constant attention, or it may push you to withdraw completely, fearing rejection. Both create suffering. The middle path says, open your heart to others gently, without clinging, and honor your solitude without fear. In this balance, relationships become healthier, built not on desperation, but on genuine connection. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of the middle path is that it helps you to see sadness and loneliness not as enemies, but as teachers. If you drown in despair, you become blind to the lesson. If you run away in denial, you miss it altogether. But if you walk in balance, you begin to see that sadness teaches you compassion, that loneliness teaches you self-connection, that both teach you impermanence. You begin to see them not as permanent curses, but as passing guides on the path of growth. Think of the strings of a musical instrument. If the strings are too tight, they snap. If they are too loose, they make no sound. Only when they are in balance do they create music. In the same way, your life must find balance to create harmony. Sadness and loneliness are like notes in your song. They do not need to be silenced completely. They need to be held in balance with other notes: gratitude, compassion, presence, joy. Together, they create the music of your journey. Over time, cultivating the middle path transforms how you face challenges. Instead of fearing sadness, you walk with it calmly. Instead of fighting loneliness, you sit with it without panic. You stop chasing extremes and begin to rest in balance. This balance does not mean you never feel pain again. It means pain no longer controls you. It becomes part of your experience, but not the whole of it. And this is the gift of the middle path. It gives you freedom. Freedom from drowning in despair. Freedom from running in denial. Freedom from the illusion that you are defined by your emotions. You discover that you are more than sadness, more than loneliness. You are the awareness walking the path, steady and balanced, able to hold both sorrow and joy with equal grace. So when life feels heavy, when your heart aches with loneliness, remember the middle path. Do not swing to extremes. Do not drown, and do not run. Walk gently, breathe deeply, and return to balance. In that balance, you will find peace, not by escaping sadness, not by denying loneliness, but by holding them both in the light of awareness. And in that holding, you will discover a truth deeper than both sadness and joy, the peace of the middle way, the quiet harmony of a heart that has learned to walk in balance. 14. Embrace the present moment as your true refuge. One of the greatest illusions that feeds sadness and loneliness is the tendency of the mind to live anywhere but here. When you are sad, the mind pulls you into the past, replaying old mistakes, lost opportunities, or painful memories. When you are lonely, the mind drags you into the future, painting endless pictures of what might go wrong, how long your suffering might last, or how bleak your path ahead may be. This endless wandering of thought makes sorrow heavier than it already is. You are not just feeling sadness, you are carrying the burden of yesterday and tomorrow on top of it. Buddhism teaches us that the true refuge, the one place where peace can always be found, is the present moment. The past has already ended, the future has not yet arrived. The only real living moment you have is now, and yet most of us abandon it, leaving our minds scattered in times that do not exist. To embrace the present moment is to return home, to release the weight of what you cannot change, and to open yourself fully to the life unfolding in front of you. This is not to say the present is always easy. Sometimes the present moment contains pain, emptiness, or difficulty. But here lies the secret: the present moment itself is never as heavy as the stories the mind adds to it. When you focus only on now, you realize you can bear it. It is only when you add yesterday's regrets and tomorrow's fears that the burden becomes unbearable. Returning to the present is like putting down a backpack filled with unnecessary weight. One way to embrace the present is through the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness is not complicated. It is simply paying attention, fully and without judgment, to what is happening right now. If you are breathing, you notice the breath. If you are walking, you feel your feet on the ground. If you are drinking tea, you notice the warmth, the taste, the aroma. The more you anchor yourself to what is real now, the less grip sadness and loneliness have, because their power comes from dragging you away from the present. When you sit in mindfulness, you may begin to notice that the present moment, though simple, carries a richness you had overlooked. The sound of the birds outside, the feel of air moving against your skin, the quiet rising and falling of your chest, all of these are signs of life. Sadness says, life is empty. The present whispers, life is here. Loneliness says, I am cut off. The present reminds you, I am breathing, I am connected to the universe in this very breath. Embracing the present moment also teaches you to stop waiting for happiness to come later. Many people believe, when this changes, when I find love, when I succeed, when my sadness disappears, then I will be at peace. But the truth is that if you cannot find peace now, in this very moment, you will not find it in the future either. Peace is not hidden in some distant time. It is available here if you know how to touch it. By embracing now, you stop postponing life. You begin to live fully, even in the midst of sadness, even in the midst of loneliness. There is a deep freedom in this. Imagine carrying a lantern in the dark. If you only focus on how long the path is or how heavy the darkness feels, despair will swallow you. But if you keep your eyes on the small circle of light around you, the only space you can truly see, you will realize that it is enough to guide your next step. The present moment is that lantern. You do not need to solve the entire future. You only need to take care of now. Step by step, moment by moment, the path unfolds. The present moment is also where healing actually happens. The past is gone, you cannot change it. The future is not here, you cannot touch it. Healing takes place in the now, in the choice to breathe, to rest, to be kind to yourself, to take a gentle step. Every act of compassion, every moment of mindfulness, every breath of awareness happens only here. To embrace now is to embrace your power, because it is the only place where you can actually live and heal. For those struggling with loneliness, the present moment can also reveal connection. Right now, as you breathe, millions of other beings are also breathing. Right now, the earth is turning, the sun is shining, the stars are glowing, countless lives are unfolding. You are not separate from this moment, you are part of it. To return to now is to return to the flow of existence, where loneliness softens into belonging. There is a story in Zen Buddhism about a man running from a tiger. He falls off a cliff and grabs a vine to save himself. Above him is the tiger. Below him another tiger waits. Then he notices a strawberry growing near him on the cliffside. Instead of panicking about the tigers, he picks the strawberry and eats it, savoring its sweetness. The lesson is simple. Life is uncertain. Danger may surround you, but the present moment still offers beauty, if you are awake enough to see it. Sadness and loneliness often convince you that life has nothing left to offer. But when you embrace now, you begin to see that even small things carry profound gifts. The warmth of tea in your hands, the softness of a blanket, the light of the morning sun, the kindness of your own breath sustaining you. These are not small, they are life itself, and they are always available in the present. Over time, embracing the present moment becomes a refuge. Whenever sadness grows heavy, you can pause and ask yourself, where am I right now? Am I lost in the past? Am I drowning in the future? Or am I here? Bringing yourself back to now is like stepping into a safe harbor where the storms of memory and fear cannot reach you. In this harbor, you can rest, you can breathe, and you can remember that you are alive. This does not mean ignoring responsibilities or never planning for the future. The middle path teaches balance. You acknowledge the past, you prepare for the future, but you live fully in the present. Planning is useful, but worrying endlessly about tomorrow only steals today. Reflecting on the past can teach you, but clinging to it only chains you. When you learn to let go of yesterday and tomorrow, you hold in your hands the only true treasure, now. So when sadness whispers, your life is broken, return to the present and notice your breath, it is whole. When loneliness says, you are cut off, return to the present and notice the air, the ground, the sky, they are with you. When despair cries, you will never find peace, return to the present and notice that peace is already here, waiting beneath the noise. To embrace the present moment as your refuge is to choose life as it is, not life as your mind demands it to be. And in this choice, sadness loses its grip, loneliness loses its sting, because you realize that in this very breath, in this very moment, you already have enough. 15. Develop inner compassion for all beings. Sadness and loneliness often make the heart turn inward, but not in a peaceful way. Instead of resting in self-connection, the mind becomes caught in a cycle of me, my pain, my emptiness, my isolation. The focus narrows until the world outside becomes blurry, and you feel like you are the only one carrying such a burden. This narrow focus magnifies suffering, making the pain feel heavier and more unbearable. Buddhism, however, offers a path that expands the heart beyond the boundaries of me. It teaches that one of the most powerful ways to ease sadness and loneliness is to cultivate compassion for all beings, to extend your heart outward, to recognize the shared suffering of life, and to transform your pain into fuel for understanding and kindness. Compassion Karuja in Buddhism is not just sympathy or pity, it is the deep wish that others be free from suffering, born from the recognition that their pain is not separate from yours. To develop compassion, you begin by seeing clearly suffering is universal. Every person you pass on the street, every face you see, carries their own invisible struggles. The wealthy, the poor, the young, the old, all are touched by loss, fear, illness, or grief. Even those who seem happiest and most surrounded by love still know moments of loneliness, doubt, and despair. When you realize this, your loneliness becomes less isolating because you understand you are walking a path that countless others also walk. The practice of compassion begins with the heart, and it expands outward. First, you acknowledge your own suffering with kindness. You place your hand on your chest and say softly, I am suffering. May I find peace. May I be free from this burden. This step is vital, because without compassion for yourself, your compassion for others will remain shallow. Self-compassion is not selfish. It is the foundation of all compassion. When you hold your own pain with gentleness, you learn how to hold the pain of others with the same tenderness. From there you expand. You begin to think of others who are suffering, friends who may be grieving, strangers you have never met, even those with whom you have conflict. You remind yourself, they too know loneliness. They too have cried at night. They too long to be understood. This reflection breaks the illusion of separation. Instead of seeing yourself as a single, isolated being drowning in sadness, You see yourself as part of a vast ocean of shared humanity. Each person is like a wave rising and falling, carrying their own sorrows. And in that shared experience, you find connection. One powerful practice for cultivating compassion is called Tonglen in Tibetan Buddhism, meaning sending and taking. In this meditation, you breathe in the suffering of others, not to be overwhelmed, but to acknowledge it, and then you breathe out compassion and peace. For example, as you inhale, you imagine taking in the loneliness of all beings who feel alone right now. As you exhale, you send them warmth, love, and peace. At first, this may feel symbolic, but over time, it changes the way you relate to suffering. Instead of shrinking from it, you embrace it, transform it, and release it as compassion. Compassion also has a practical dimension. It is not only a meditation but also an action. When you feel lonely, your instinct may be to withdraw, to close your heart. But if you consciously open your heart and seek ways to ease someone else's pain, even in small ways, you discover a strange truth. In healing others, you heal yourself. A kind word to a stranger, a gesture of patience, a silent wish of well-being for someone who is struggling, these small acts expand your heart. They create connection where there was isolation. And each time you serve another being, even quietly, you remind yourself that your existence carries meaning, that your presence matters. Compassion also transforms sadness into wisdom. When you experience deep pain, you gain the ability to understand others at a level that those untouched by suffering may never reach. Your loneliness teaches you what it feels like to long for connection, so you can recognize that same longing in another. Your sadness teaches you the weight of despair, so you can recognize that weight in the eyes of others. Instead of seeing your suffering as meaningless, compassion allows you to see it as training, preparing your heart to be a source of comfort for others. In this way, your pain becomes a gift, not only for you, but for the world. There is another profound layer to compassion. It dissolves the illusion of self versus other. When you extend compassion, you realize that the boundaries between you and others are not as solid as they seem. Their suffering touches you, and your kindness touches them. Your loneliness is not separate from theirs. It is part of a shared web of life. This realization brings a deep sense of belonging. You are not an isolated being floating in emptiness. You are part of the vast, interconnected flow of existence. Developing compassion also protects you from bitterness. Loneliness can sometimes harden the heart, making you resentful of others who seem happy or connected. Sadness can make you envious of those who appear free of suffering. But when you cultivate compassion, envy is replaced with understanding. Instead of resenting others, you wish them well. Instead of comparing your life, you recognize the hidden struggles they carry. Compassion softens the heart, keeping it open, tender, and capable of love, even in the midst of sorrow. Practicing compassion does not mean ignoring your own needs. It does not mean pouring yourself out until you are empty. True compassion is balanced. It includes yourself as much as it includes others. If you care for others while neglecting yourself, resentment will grow. If you care only for yourself while ignoring others, loneliness will deepen. Compassion walks the middle path, holding both self and others in equal light, wishing peace for all. You can bring this practice into daily life in many ways. When you see someone walking alone, silently wish them peace. When you notice someone struggling, offer patience instead of judgment. When you hear of suffering in the world, instead of turning away, pause for a moment and send compassion. Even if your action seems invisible, it changes you. Each act of compassion polishes the heart, like a mirror slowly being cleaned until its true brightness shines. Over time, developing compassion for all beings changes the way you experience your own sadness. You begin to see your loneliness not as a wall, but as a bridge, a bridge connecting you to the millions of others who feel the same. You realize that in your suffering, you are not separate but deeply connected. And this realization itself eases the weight, because connection is the antidote to loneliness. In Buddhist teachings, compassion and wisdom are said to be like the two wings of a bird. With only one wing, the bird cannot fly. Wisdom without compassion becomes cold, detached, and incomplete. Compassion without wisdom becomes blind, overwhelming, and exhausting. But together, they allow the heart to soar. By developing inner compassion for all beings, you give yourself one of those wings. You balance your wisdom of impermanence, mindfulness, and interconnection with the warmth of love, kindness, and care. Together, they carry you beyond sadness and loneliness into a deeper freedom. So when sadness weighs heavily and loneliness makes you feel small, remember this practice: open your heart outward. Begin with yourself, then extend it to others. Breathe in their suffering, breathe out compassion. Speak gently, act kindly, think generously. Each step transforms your pain into light. And in that light you will discover a truth that loneliness tries to hide. You are not alone, and you never were. You are part of a vast family of beings, each longing for peace, each deserving of compassion, each connected through the thread of life. To develop compassion for all beings is to expand beyond the narrow prison of self. It is to dissolve loneliness by recognizing shared humanity. It is to transform sadness into tenderness, turning wounds into wisdom. And as you live in compassion, you will find that even in your darkest hours, your heart remains open, steady, and full of peace. Serenity, discover peace in letting go. When sadness and loneliness arise, the natural impulse of the mind is to cling. We cling to memories of happier times, wishing they could return. We cling to people who are no longer with us, aching for their presence. We cling to expectations of how life should be, comparing it constantly to how it actually is. This clinging, this tight grasping of the heart and mind, makes suffering far heavier than it needs to be. Instead of flowing with the river of life, we clutch at its waters, only to feel them slipping away no matter how tightly we hold on. Buddhism teaches that one of the greatest sources of human suffering is attachment, and one of the greatest paths to peace is learning to let go. Letting go does not mean giving up on life or rejecting love. It does not mean becoming cold, empty, or indifferent. In fact, it is the opposite. Letting go means releasing the burden of control, loosening the grip of expectation, and allowing life to move as it naturally does. It means opening your hands so that both joy and sorrow can pass through without breaking you. When you let go, you stop fighting reality, and in that acceptance you find peace. Think about the times when sadness has overwhelmed you. Often the sadness is tied to something you are unwilling to release: a relationship that has ended, a dream that did not unfold, a version of yourself that no longer exists, a companionship you crave but do not have. The pain is real, but the suffering multiplies when you cling to what is already gone. The Buddha compared this to being struck by two arrows. The first arrow is the unavoidable pain of life: loss, change, disappointment. The second arrow is self-inflicted: the clinging, the replaying, the resistance, the refusal to let go. By practicing release, you avoid the second arrow. The pain may remain for a time, but the suffering lessens because you are no longer feeding it with resistance. Letting go also means releasing the stories the mind tells. Loneliness may convince you, "I will always be alone." Sadness may whisper, "I will never be happy again." These are stories, clouds passing through the sky. The more you cling to them, the darker the sky becomes. But when you let them drift, when you stop holding them as truth, the sky clears and the light returns. The practice of letting go begins with awareness. Notice when you are holding too tightly, when your mind is replaying old memories, when your heart is craving what is not here, when your body feels tense with resistance. In those moments, pause, breathe deeply. Say softly to yourself, I release, I allow, I let go. At first, these words may feel small compared to the weight you carry, but like drops of water carving stone, repeated practice shapes the mind. Slowly the grip loosens, and the heart grows lighter. One of the most profound teachings of Buddhism is impermanence. Everything changes. Relationships change. Emotions change. Life itself changes, moment by moment. Holding on tightly to what cannot be held only deepens suffering. Letting go is not a loss, it is an alignment with reality. When you flow with impermanence, instead of resisting it, peace naturally arises. You begin to trust that even if joy fades, it will return in another form. Even if people leave, life will bring new connections. Even if sorrow comes, it will not last forever. Letting go also creates space for newness. Imagine your hands are full of old, heavy stones. You cling to them because they are familiar, even though they weigh you down. As long as you hold them, your hands cannot receive anything new. But when you finally release them, your hands are empty, ready to hold flowers, water, light. In the same way, when you let go of clinging to the past or to what is missing, you create space for new peace, new connections, new possibilities to enter your life. This practice is especially healing for loneliness. Loneliness often grows when we cling to the idea that we must have certain people or certain circumstances to feel whole. We tell ourselves, if only this person loved me, if only I had this kind of relationship, if only I belonged somewhere, then I would be happy. But this kind of clinging only deepens emptiness, because it ties your peace to something outside of your control. When you let go of the demand that life must look a certain way, you discover a deeper freedom, the ability to feel whole in yourself, even as life continues to change. Letting go is not always easy. The mind fears that if you release your grip, you will lose everything. But the truth is, holding on too tightly causes you to lose peace, while letting go allows peace to return. It is like trying to hold on to water with a clenched fist. It slips through, and your hand remains empty. But when you open your palm, the water rests gently. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop controlling, stop demanding, and allow life to move through you with ease. A practical way to cultivate this is through meditation on impermanence. Sit quietly and reflect on the breath. Notice how each inhale comes and goes, how each exhale fades into stillness. You cannot hold on to a breath, it must be released. And yet when you let it go, a new one always comes. This simple observation teaches you that life itself is constant letting go. Every moment dies into the next. When you align yourself with this truth, you no longer fear release, because you see it as part of the natural rhythm of existence. Letting go also applies to your relationship with yourself. Many people cling not only to others but also to old versions of who they once were. You may mourn the person you used to be, the opportunities you once had, the strength you once felt. This clinging creates sadness because you are comparing the present you with an image of the past. But the self is not fixed. Just as seasons change, you change. Letting go means honoring who you were but accepting who you are now. When you stop demanding that you be someone else, you open the door to peace with yourself. Another powerful layer of letting go is forgiveness. When you hold on to anger, resentment, or regret, you chain yourself to the past. These chains keep sadness alive because the mind replays the same pain again and again. Forgiveness is the act of releasing those chains. It does not mean forgetting, and it does not mean approving of harm. It means freeing yourself from the grip of resentment so that you can move forward. Forgiveness is a form of letting go, and in it, the heart finds space to heal. In Buddhist tradition, monks sometimes practice letting go by reflecting on death, not as a morbid thought, but as a reminder of impermanence. They remind themselves that everything they cling to, possessions, relationships, even their own bodies, will eventually pass. Far from depressing, this reflection awakens gratitude. It teaches them to hold everything lightly, to cherish without clinging, to love without grasping, to live fully without fear. You too can practice this by gently reminding yourself, this moment is temporary. This sadness is temporary. This loneliness is temporary. I let it come. I let it go. Over time, the practice of letting go transforms your entire relationship with life. You no longer chase desperately after happiness because you know clinging will only push it away. You no longer fight endlessly against sadness because you know resisting only makes it stronger. Instead, you allow emotions, people, and experiences to flow naturally. Some stay, some leave, but you remain steady, anchored in the peace of release. And here lies the greatest gift. Letting go reveals what cannot be taken from you. When you release the grasping, you discover that beneath it all, there is a spaciousness within you that cannot be harmed by change. Sadness may visit, loneliness may come, but your true self remains vast, open, and free. In that spaciousness, you find peace deeper than any possession, deeper than any relationship, deeper than any temporary state of mind. So when sadness grips your chest and loneliness convinces you that you are abandoned, remember the practice of letting go. Let go of the past that cannot return. Let go of the future that has not arrived. Let go of the demand that life must fit your expectations. Let go of the stories that your mind repeats. With each release you grow lighter. With each release you step closer to peace. Letting go is not losing, it is gaining freedom. It is gaining the ability to live fully in this moment, unburdened by what is gone or what may come. It is gaining the strength to walk gently, even in sorrow, because your hands are no longer weighed down by what you cannot hold. And in this freedom, sadness no longer defines you, loneliness no longer imprisons you, because you have discovered the art of release, the wisdom of letting life flow, and the peace of letting go. 17. Find strength in impermanence and change. Sadness and loneliness feel unbearable, mostly because they convince us that they are permanent. In the middle of sorrow, a single day can feel like an eternity. In the depth of loneliness, even a short silence can feel like endless exile. The mind whispers, "This will never end. You will always feel this way." And because the mind is skilled at storytelling, we believe it. We mistake temporary states for eternal truths. Yet Buddhism teaches us one of the most liberating insights of all. Everything is impermanent. Every feeling, every thought, every season, every relationship, every situation is constantly shifting. Nothing stays the same, and within that truth lies immense strength and hope. The Buddha described impermanence, anicca, as one of the three marks of existence. He did not present it as something to fear, but as a reality to embrace, because within impermanence is freedom. If things were permanent, suffering would last forever. If emotions were fixed, despair would be endless. But because everything changes, even the heaviest sadness softens, even the deepest loneliness shifts. What feels overwhelming today can feel lighter tomorrow, and what feels empty now can blossom with meaning in the future. Look back at your own life. Think of the moments you once believed you would never survive, the heartbreaks, the losses, the nights of despair. At the time, you may have been certain they would break you, yet here you are. Somehow, time carried you forward, and the intensity of those feelings changed. This is proof of impermanence at work. The truth is not that sadness disappears forever, but that it transforms, reshapes itself, and eventually passes like clouds drifting across the sky. Impermanence is everywhere, if you only pause to notice. The flowers in spring bloom brightly, then fade. The sun rises, then sets. The seasons turn, one into another, without clinging to what came before. Even your body changes constantly, the cells of your skin, the beat of your heart, the rhythm of your breath. Nothing stands still. Life is movement itself. To resist impermanence is to resist reality. To embrace impermanence is to flow with life as it is. When sadness arises, contemplate impermanence by reminding yourself, this too shall pass. Not as a cliché, but as a living truth. No matter how dark the night, dawn eventually arrives. No matter how heavy the rain, the sky clears. Sadness may visit, but it cannot stay forever. Loneliness may ache, but it too is impermanent. By remembering this, you loosen the grip of despair. You give yourself hope, not by denying your pain, but by placing it in its true context, as a temporary guest in the vast house of your life. But impermanence is not only a comfort for hard times, it is also a teacher for joy. Because joy too is impermanent, we learn to cherish it more deeply while it is here. Instead of clinging desperately, fearing its loss, we savor it, knowing it is precious precisely because it will not last. Gratitude blossoms from this awareness. The smile of a loved one, the taste of a meal, the beauty of a sunset. These moments become sacred because they are fleeting. Impermanence teaches us to be present, to live fully, to love deeply, without taking anything for granted. In fact, impermanence is what makes life beautiful. Imagine if nothing ever changed, if flowers never faded, if nights never ended, if emotions never shifted. Life would be static, lifeless, without movement or growth. Change is what allows transformation. The seed becomes a tree. The child becomes an adult. Winter becomes spring. Suffering becomes wisdom. Without impermanence, there would be no healing, no learning, no possibility of renewal. So when sadness or loneliness convinces you that life is stuck, remember, life is never stuck. It is always moving, always changing, always becoming something new. To practice with impermanence, you can begin with the breath. Each inhale arises, exists for a moment, and then passes into an exhale. Each exhale fades, making room for the next inhale. You cannot hold on to a single breath. It must change. And yet the rhythm continues, carrying you forward. In this way, your breath becomes a living reminder of impermanence. When you feel sadness, breathe and observe. This feeling, too, is like the breath. It arises, it stays for a time, it passes. Another practice is to observe nature. Watch the sky throughout the day. Notice how clouds form and dissolve, how light shifts from morning to night, how stars appear and disappear. See how trees shed their leaves and then grow new ones. Each observation is a mirror of your own inner life. Just as the seasons change, so too do your emotions. Just as the river flows, so too does your experience. By watching nature, you train yourself to trust impermanence, to see it not as a threat, but as a promise of renewal. Impermanence also transforms the way we hold relationships. Loneliness often comes from clinging to what is lost, someone who has left, someone who has passed away, or someone who cannot be with you. The pain of loss is real, but impermanence reminds us that nothing and no one truly remains unchanged. The time you shared was beautiful because it was temporary. Its impermanence gave it meaning. By embracing this truth, you can grieve without being trapped in endless sorrow. You honor what was, while accepting that change is the nature of all things. There is also strength in realizing that impermanence applies not only to emotions, but also to identities. You may see yourself as a sad person or a lonely person, but even this self-image is impermanent. Who you are is always shifting, shaped by your choices, your awareness, your practice. You are not defined by sadness or loneliness. They are states passing through you, not who you are. To remember impermanence is to reclaim your freedom to grow, to transform, to begin again at any moment. This teaching also helps us live with less fear. Much of sadness and loneliness is rooted in the fear of change. We fear losing what we love. We fear being abandoned. We fear uncertainty, but impermanence is not something to fear. It is something to embrace. Because of impermanence, suffering ends. Because of impermanence, joy returns. Because of impermanence, every moment is new, full of possibility. To live in harmony with impermanence is to live without fear, to trust the flow of life. A Zen story tells of a monk who asked his teacher, "What is the most important teaching?" The teacher replied, "This too shall pass." The monk frowned, thinking this meant only loss. But the teacher explained, "Yes, everything passes. Your joy, your sorrow, your breath, your thoughts. But because all passes, you are free. Free to let go, free to begin again, free to live fully now." When you deeply realize impermanence, sadness loses its grip because you no longer see it as forever. Loneliness loses its sting because you know it too will shift. Even in the darkest moments, you carry the lantern of impermanence, reminding you that the night will not last. And when joy comes, you savor it without clinging, because you know its impermanence makes it precious. So when the weight of sadness presses on your chest, remember impermanence. When the ache of loneliness makes you feel forgotten, remember impermanence. Sit quietly, breathe, observe the changing nature of everything. Say gently to yourself, "This is not forever, this will pass. I can hold it with patience until it changes." Impermanence is not a curse, but a gift. It is what allows you to heal, to grow, to transform. It is what makes each moment alive, fresh, unique. It is what frees you from despair and teaches you gratitude. To find strength in impermanence is to walk with trust in the flow of life, knowing that nothing binds you forever, that change is always possible, that renewal is certain. In this way, impermanence becomes your ally, not your enemy. It carries you gently from sorrow to peace, from loneliness to connection, from despair to hope. And when you embrace it fully, you discover that even in the middle of sadness, you are already free, because nothing lasts, and within that truth lies the doorway to liberation. 18. Cultivate equanimity, the calm heart in the midst of storms. When sadness and loneliness arrive, the heart often swings like a pendulum between extremes. One moment you are drowning in despair, feeling as though the darkness will swallow you whole. The next moment, you may be desperately searching for something, anything that can bring relief, clinging to small distractions or temporary comforts that never truly last. These swings exhaust the spirit, leaving you restless and unsteady, as though you are a leaf blown back and forth by the winds of emotion. Buddhism teaches that there is a deeper quality of mind that can steady you in the midst of life's storms, equanimity, known in Pali as upekkha. Equanimity does not mean coldness or indifference. It does not mean you stop feeling or stop caring. Instead, it means cultivating a calm, balanced heart that is able to remain steady in the face of both joy and sorrow, connection and loneliness, gain and loss. It is the ability to face life with openness and peace, without being tossed endlessly between clinging and aversion. Equanimity is often described as a mountain. The winds may blow fiercely around it, storms may rage, rains may fall, yet the mountain remains unmoved, steady, rooted deeply in the earth. In the same way, when you cultivate equanimity, the storms of sadness and loneliness may still swirl around you, but they do not uproot you. You remain grounded, calm and aware, The feelings come and go, but your inner stability endures. Why is equanimity so important in times of sadness and loneliness? Because it prevents you from being ruled by extremes. Without equanimity, sadness turns into despair, loneliness turns into hopelessness, and every small difficulty becomes overwhelming. With equanimity, you can sit with your feelings without drowning in them. You can observe them with compassion and patience, knowing they are temporary, knowing they do not define you. Equanimity gives you the strength to stay present without being swept away. Equanimity begins with understanding the nature of all things. Everything changes. Pleasure comes and goes. Pain comes and goes. People come and go. When you forget this, you cling desperately to what you want and resist fiercely what you dislike. But when you remember impermanence, you learn to face both joy and sorrow with a balanced heart. You stop clinging so tightly, and you stop fighting so harshly. Instead, you rest in the middle, calm and steady, like a boat balanced on the water. To cultivate equanimity, practice seeing your emotions as passing weather. When sadness arises, instead of saying, "This is me, this is forever," say, "This is sadness. It has arisen. It will stay for a while, and it will pass." When loneliness arises, do the same. "This is loneliness. It has come. It will change. It will not last." By naming the emotion and observing it, you create space between yourself and the feeling. You are no longer trapped inside it. You are the sky watching the weather. The clouds may be heavy, but the sky itself remains vast and untouched. Another aspect of equanimity is learning to treat both pleasant and unpleasant experiences with the same calm. Normally, we chase after what feels good and push away what feels bad. But this constant chasing and resisting is what creates suffering. Equanimity teaches you to meet both with equal acceptance. When joy comes, you enjoy it fully, but without clinging. When sorrow comes, you accept it without despair. In this way, your peace no longer depends on external conditions. It arises from within, steady and unshaken. There is a famous story of a farmer in Zen tradition. One day his horse runs away. His neighbors say, "What bad luck?" The farmer simply replies, "Maybe." A few days later, the horse returns with several wild horses. The neighbors say, "What good luck?" Again the farmer says, "Maybe." Later, the farmer's son tries to ride one of the wild horses, falls and breaks his leg. The neighbors exclaim, "What bad luck?" The farmer replies, "Maybe." Soon after, soldiers come to the village to take young men to war, but because the son's leg is broken, he is spared. The neighbors cry, "What good luck?" The farmer once again says, "Maybe." The lesson is simple. Life is always changing. What seems bad today may lead to good tomorrow. What seems good today may bring challenges tomorrow. Equanimity means not clinging to either extreme, but meeting each moment with calm acceptance, knowing that all conditions are temporary. In times of sadness, this teaching is deeply healing. Instead of believing, "This is the end, this is permanent," you rest in the calm understanding that sadness too is only a passing condition. Instead of believing, "I will always be lonely," you rest in the quiet, knowing that loneliness too will shift. Equanimity allows you to face even deep pain without panic, because you trust in the flow of change. Practicing equanimity also protects your relationships. Loneliness often makes us cling too tightly to others when they are present, or resent them when they are absent. With equanimity, you can love without clinging, and you can let go without bitterness. You see that people, like all things, are impermanent. Their presence is a gift. Their absence is also part of the flow of life. Instead of demanding permanence, you learn to cherish without grasping, to release without resentment. One practical way to develop equanimity is through meditation on the four immeasurables: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity itself. You begin by cultivating love for yourself, then for others, then for all beings, wishing them peace and freedom from suffering. Finally, you expand to equanimity, wishing all beings well, without preference or attachment, recognizing that each being follows their own path, shaped by causes and conditions. This meditation trains the heart to remain open and balanced, even in the face of joy or sorrow. Equanimity also grows from daily mindfulness. Each time you encounter a challenge, pause and breathe. Notice the urge to react, whether to cling or to resist. Instead of following the urge, step back and observe. Say softly to yourself, "This too will pass. I remain steady." Over time, this becomes natural. Your mind no longer leaps at every pleasure or recoils at every pain. It rests in balance, calm and clear. The fruit of equanimity is freedom. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm, but instead of being blown away, you stand like a mountain, steady, rooted, unshaken. The storm may rage, but it cannot move you. That is the gift of equanimity. Sadness may arise, loneliness may visit, but they no longer control you. You feel them, you accept them, but you remain calm, knowing they are temporary, knowing you are greater than any passing emotion. Equanimity is not indifference. It is love in its most mature form. It allows you to care deeply without being destroyed by attachment. It allows you to face suffering with compassion without being overwhelmed. It allows you to enjoy joy fully without clinging to it desperately. It is the balance of the awakened heart, the calm in the center of life's storms. So when sadness overwhelms you, when loneliness convinces you that you cannot endure, practice equanimity. Sit quietly, breathe and remind yourself, this is only a passing storm. I am the mountain. I remain steady. Trust in the truth of impermanence. Trust in the balance of your own heart. With equanimity, you discover a peace that does not depend on circumstances, a calm that endures even in sorrow, and a strength that carries you through all storms. 19. Accept yourself fully. The end of inner struggle. One of the most painful roots of sadness and loneliness is not just the absence of others, but the quiet war we fight against ourselves. When we are sad, we often say, "I should not feel this way. I should be stronger. I should be happier." When we are lonely, we whisper, "Something must be wrong with me. If I were different, people would stay. If I were better, I would not feel so empty." These inner voices cut deeper than external pain because they turn suffering into self-rejection. Instead of sadness being just sadness, it becomes evidence in the mind's court that you are unworthy. Instead of loneliness being just loneliness, it becomes a judgment that you are broken. Buddhism invites us to lay down this inner war and to practice radical acceptance of ourselves exactly as we are. This does not mean ignoring flaws or refusing growth. It means ceasing to treat yourself as an enemy. It means recognizing that your sadness does not make you less human, it makes you fully human. It means understanding that loneliness does not mean you are unlovable, it simply means you are longing for connection, which is a universal human need. Accepting yourself fully is the act of turning toward yourself with compassion instead of criticism, with understanding instead of judgment, with tenderness instead of punishment. Why is self-acceptance so powerful? Because resistance multiplies suffering. Imagine you are carrying a heavy stone of sadness. If you say, "This stone should not be here," you fight against it, straining, adding frustration to the already heavy load. But if you say, "This is the stone I carry right now," something shifts. The weight may not vanish, but it feels lighter because you are no longer resisting it. Acceptance creates space around pain, turning a crushing burden into something bearable. Self-acceptance begins with awareness. Notice the judgments you place on yourself when sadness or loneliness arises. Notice how quickly your mind labels you weak, pathetic, unworthy. Instead of believing these judgments, pause and observe them. Ask gently, is this true, or is this my inner critic speaking? Often you will find that these judgments are not truths but old echoes, voices of comparison, voices of fear, voices of past wounds. The more you observe them, the more power they lose. Then practice replacing judgment with compassion. When sadness arises, instead of saying, I am weak, say, this is a moment of suffering. May I be kind to myself. When loneliness arises, instead of saying, I am unlovable, say, this is a longing for connection. May I offer myself patience and care. These small shifts in language create deep shifts in the heart. You stop stabbing yourself with criticism and begin to soothe yourself with kindness. A powerful meditation for self-acceptance is to sit quietly, place your hand on your heart, and repeat phrases of compassion. May I accept myself as I am. May I be kind to myself in moments of pain. May I know that I am enough. At first, these words may feel false, especially if you are used to self-criticism, but over time, they plant seeds in the soil of your heart. With practice, those seeds grow into genuine acceptance until one day you realize you no longer treat yourself as an enemy, but as a friend. Accepting yourself also means accepting your humanity. You are not perfect, and you never need to be. Perfection is an illusion created by comparison, by measuring yourself against impossible standards. The Buddha never asked us to be perfect. He asked us to be mindful, compassionate, awake. To be human is to feel sadness sometimes, to feel loneliness sometimes, to make mistakes, to stumble, to rise again. When you accept this, you release the impossible demand to always be happy, always be strong, always be in control. You allow yourself to be real. This acceptance also transforms the way you relate to others. When you reject yourself, you fear rejection from others. You cling to relationships desperately, hoping someone else will fill the void of your own self-judgment. But when you accept yourself, you no longer need others to prove your worth. You connect with them out of wholeness, not out of desperation. Relationships become healthier, freer, more authentic. And even when you are alone, you no longer feel abandoned because you are no longer abandoning yourself. Self-acceptance is also the key to inner peace. Much of our suffering comes not from the feelings themselves, but from the belief that we should not have them. We fight against sadness, which only deepens it. We resist loneliness, which only isolates us further. But when we accept, the struggle ends. Sadness may remain, but it becomes gentle. Loneliness may linger, but it becomes bearable. Acceptance softens the edges of suffering, turning sharp pain into a softer ache that no longer controls you. A Zen teacher once said, "When you learn to sit with your demons, you discover they are not demons at all. They are wounded children asking for love. Your sadness is not your enemy. It is a part of you asking for understanding. Your loneliness is not your enemy. It is a part of you asking for connection. When you accept them instead of fighting them, you heal them. You turn wounds into wisdom, pain into compassion." Practical steps to cultivate self-acceptance include journaling with kindness. Each day, write down 3 ways you were gentle with yourself. Or, when you hear the inner critic, write its words on paper, then respond with compassion, as if you were speaking to a dear friend. Over time, this retrains your inner dialogue, replacing harshness with tenderness. Another practice is mindful mirror gazing. Stand in front of a mirror, look into your own eyes, and say softly, "I accept you. I see your pain. I see your effort. You are enough." This may feel uncomfortable at first, but it is powerful because it confronts the inner critic directly with compassion. Self-acceptance does not mean stagnation. It does not mean refusing to grow. It means creating a foundation of love from which growth naturally arises. When you accept yourself, you are no longer motivated by shame or fear. You are motivated by love, and love creates sustainable, gentle change. You improve not because you hate yourself, but because you care for yourself. This kind of growth is peaceful, lasting, and nourishing. The fruit of self-acceptance is freedom. Imagine living without the constant battle against yourself. Imagine sadness arising, and instead of spiraling into self-criticism, you simply say, "This is sadness. It is okay to feel this." Imagine loneliness arriving, and instead of believing it means you are broken, you say, "This is loneliness. It does not define my worth." In this way, you live with spaciousness. Feelings come and go, but your acceptance remains steady. So when sadness and loneliness visit, practice acceptance. Place your hand on your heart and say, "I am enough as I am. I accept this moment. I accept myself." Over time, these words become truth. The inner critic quiets. The war within ends. And in that peace you discover that you were never broken, never unworthy, never alone. You were always whole, always human, always deserving of love. To accept yourself fully is to lay down the heaviest burden of all, the burden of self-rejection. And when that burden falls, sadness and loneliness lose their sharpness, because you no longer fight yourself. You become your own refuge, your own companion, your own source of peace. This is the liberation that comes with acceptance, the end of inner struggle, the beginning of true freedom. 20. Discover joy in small things, awakening to everyday miracles. When sadness and loneliness arrive, they make the world feel grey and empty. Food tastes dull, days feel heavy, time stretches endlessly. The mind becomes consumed by what is missing, by what you wish could be different. In those moments, it is easy to believe that joy has abandoned you entirely. Yet Buddhism teaches that joy is never absent. It is simply hidden, waiting in the ordinary details of life. The practice is not to chase joy as a distant goal, but to awaken to the joy that is already here, in small, simple things that most of us overlook. The Buddha once said that a wise person is easily satisfied, like the ocean filled drop by drop. Joy does not always come in great waves. It often comes in droplets. A warm sip of tea, the sound of birds singing, the feel of the sun on your skin, the laughter of a child, the softness of a pillow, the fragrance of flowers. When you are sad or lonely, these droplets may seem insignificant. But when you learn to notice them, to savor them, to let them fill your heart, they accumulate into something vast. Slowly, they turn emptiness into fullness, loneliness into connection, sadness into gratitude. Why do we miss this joy? Because the mind is distracted, restless, and dissatisfied. When you are lonely, you focus only on the absence of people, ignoring the presence of life all around you. When you are sad, you focus only on what is wrong, overlooking what is quietly right. The mind always chases bigger happiness, bigger success, bigger connections, but in doing so, it misses the small miracles constantly unfolding. Joy is not far away, it is here, hidden in plain sight. All you must do is slow down and open your eyes. Mindfulness is the key to this awakening. When you drink water, truly taste it. Notice its coolness, its clarity, its gift of life. When you walk, feel your feet touching the earth. Notice the stability of the ground holding you. When you breathe, feel the air moving through your chest, sustaining you without asking for anything in return. Each of these moments, when touched with mindfulness, becomes a source of joy. They remind you that even in sadness, life continues to offer beauty. There is a story of a Zen master walking with his student. The student was filled with complaints about loneliness, about suffering, about the harshness of life. The master stopped, pointed to a flower growing by the path and asked, "Did you notice this?" The student shook his head. The master said, "That is your problem. Life gives you flowers every day, but you are too busy looking at the thorns. Joy is not absent. Attention is absent. When you give your attention to small wonders, joy naturally arises." Practicing joy in small things also helps loosen the grip of loneliness. When you feel lonely, the mind insists that connection is absent. But if you look closely, connection is everywhere. The tea you drink connects you to the farmers, the soil, the rain, the sun. The chair you sit on connects you to the tree it came from, and the hands that shaped it. Even the air connects you to trees and plants, sharing their breath with you. When you see these connections, loneliness softens. You realize you are never truly alone. You are woven into life through countless small threads. Sadness too loses its weight when you awaken to everyday joy. Sadness convinces you that life is meaningless. But when you watch the sun rise, when you hear laughter, when you taste sweetness, you realize life is filled with meaning. It just doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, softly, through the smallest details. Joy in small things is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet, steady, nourishing. Like a candle in the dark, it may not banish all shadows, but it lights the path enough to keep walking. One practice to cultivate this joy is keeping a gratitude journal focused only on small things. Each day, write down 3 tiny moments that brought you joy. Maybe it was the way sunlight filtered through your window, the comfort of warm food, the kindness of a smile, or the silence of early morning. Over time, this trains your mind to notice beauty instead of overlooking it. The more you notice, the more joy becomes part of your daily awareness. Another practice is mindful savoring. Whatever you are doing, eating, walking, listening, pause and savor it fully. When eating, don't just swallow quickly. Notice the taste, the texture, the gift of nourishment. When walking, don't rush. Feel each step, the strength of your legs, the support of the earth. When listening, don't half listen. Be fully present, receiving the sounds as if they were music. This savoring transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. Joy in small things also teaches impermanence. When you notice a flower blooming, you know it will soon fade. That makes it more precious. When you watch a child laugh, you know the moment will pass. That makes it more beautiful. Impermanence, instead of being a source of sadness, becomes the very reason to cherish the present. You realize that every small joy is a gift, fleeting but profound, never to be repeated in the same way again. This practice does not deny pain. Sadness and loneliness may still be present, but joy can exist alongside pain. The Buddha never promised that life would be free of suffering. He promised that peace is possible, even in suffering. Finding joy in small things is one way to live this truth. You learn that sadness can sit in one part of your heart, while joy blooms quietly in another. They can coexist. You can feel lonely and still smile at the beauty of a sunrise. You can feel sad and still savor the taste of tea. This balance is not denial. It is wisdom. Over time, joy in small things reshapes your entire perspective. You stop chasing happiness as something distant, something to be achieved in the future. You realize happiness is already here, hidden in each moment. This shift changes everything. Life no longer feels empty because you see it is full of tiny wonders, full of quiet gifts, full of reasons to smile even through tears. The fruit of this practice is resilience. When storms of sadness come, you still have anchors of joy. When loneliness arrives, you still have companions in small beauties. These small joys become your refuge, your reminders that life is still worth living, still precious, still offering light. So when sadness makes life feel grey, when loneliness makes you feel abandoned, pause. Look around. Notice the color of the sky, the taste of your food, the sound of your breath, the kindness of your own hand resting on your chest. These are not small, they are everything. They are life itself, reminding you that joy has never left. It was only waiting for you to notice. To discover joy in small things is to rediscover life. It is to awaken to everyday miracles that sadness tries to hide. It is to find light in places you thought were dark. And in that light, sadness softens, loneliness loosens, and you realize that even in the simplest moment, joy is always here, quiet, gentle, waiting for you to see. 21. Sit with emptiness until it becomes your teacher. Few experiences in life feel heavier than the weight of emptiness. When sadness covers the heart and loneliness surrounds the mind, what remains is often a hollow feeling, a sense that something essential is missing, that your life lacks meaning, that you are drifting through a vast, silent void. This emptiness can feel terrifying, as though it will swallow you whole. Most people, when faced with this, run. They rush to fill the void with distractions, endless scrolling, shallow conversations, constant noise, shopping, overeating, or chasing fleeting pleasures. Anything feels safer than sitting with the hollow ache of emptiness. But Buddhism offers a radically different path. Do not run from emptiness. Sit with it. Look directly at it. Breathe with it. Allow it to be present without resistance. For when you stop running, you discover something astonishing. Emptiness is not your enemy. Emptiness is a teacher. Emptiness is not the absence of life. It is the doorway to deeper life. Why does emptiness feel so frightening? Because the mind craves solidity, certainty, identity. You want to define yourself clearly. I am this kind of person. I have this relationship. I play this role. I belong here. But when sadness strips away joy, when loneliness removes companionship, those definitions dissolve. Suddenly you no longer know who you are or where you fit. The ego panics because it depends on labels and attachments. Without them, it feels like death. This is why emptiness hurts so deeply. It threatens the ego's illusions. Yet Buddhism teaches that emptiness, shunyata, is not a void of despair, but the true nature of reality. Everything we cling to, roles, identities, possessions, even emotions, is impermanent, constantly changing, without fixed essence. When these dissolve, what remains is emptiness. But emptiness is not nothingness. It is openness. It is spaciousness. It is freedom. It is the vast sky after clouds pass. It is the fertile soil waiting for new seeds. When you sit with emptiness long enough, it transforms from something terrifying into something liberating. Imagine sitting in a quiet room after a storm of noise. At first, the silence feels uncomfortable, even unbearable. But if you stay, if you breathe, the silence begins to feel peaceful, nourishing, full of presence. The same is true of emptiness. At first, it feels like loss, but with patience, it becomes spaciousness. It becomes the place where healing begins. How do you practice sitting with emptiness? Begin by noticing it without judgment. When the ache of loneliness arises, instead of distracting yourself, sit quietly and feel it. Where is it in your body? Is it a heaviness in the chest, a hollow in the stomach, a tightness in the throat? Breathe into that space gently. Say to yourself, this is emptiness. It is here. It is not forever. Instead of running, you face it. Instead of fearing it, you befriend it. As you sit, you may notice that the emptiness changes. It may expand, contract, shift, or dissolve. You begin to realize that even emptiness is impermanent. It is not a fixed state, it is a passing visitor, and in watching it change, you realize it has no power to destroy you. It is simply another wave in the ocean of experience. Sitting with emptiness also reveals hidden truths. Often, emptiness points to what you value most. Loneliness shows you how deeply you long for connection. Sadness shows you how deeply you care about love, meaning, or belonging. These longings are not weaknesses, they are reflections of your heart's depth. Emptiness teaches you where your true values lie, guiding you toward what matters. But emptiness also teaches that you are not defined by lack. When you stop fighting it, you realize you are larger than emptiness. You are the space in which it arises, not the void itself. Just as the sky holds both clouds and clear space, you hold both fullness and emptiness. And because you are the sky, not the cloud, you remain whole no matter what passes through. There is a Zen saying, "Empty yourself, and you will be filled." This paradox points to the truth that when you allow emptiness, you create space for new life to enter. If you cling tightly to what is gone, your hands are too full to receive anything new. But when you release, when you allow emptiness, your heart becomes like an open cup, ready to be filled with fresh water. Emptiness is not the end, it is the beginning. To deepen this practice, try meditating on spaciousness. Sit quietly, breathe, and imagine your body expanding like the sky. Each thought, each emotion, each sensation arises like a cloud and then dissolves. Even emptiness itself becomes just another cloud in the vast sky of awareness. You begin to see that nothing can harm the sky. No matter how many storms pass, the sky remains vast, open, unbroken. That sky is your true nature. Emptiness cannot damage it. It can only remind you of its infinite space. Another practice is to contemplate the space between things. Notice the silence between sounds, the pause between breaths, the gap between thoughts. That space is emptiness, and yet it is full of potential. Without silence, there would be no music. Without space, there would be no form. Without emptiness, there would be no possibility for change, growth, or creation. By reflecting on this, you begin to see emptiness not as a curse, but as the foundation of all life. This shift is powerful for healing sadness and loneliness. When you fear emptiness, loneliness feels unbearable. But when you accept emptiness, loneliness becomes space for self-discovery, creativity, and growth. When you resist emptiness, sadness feels endless. But when you sit with emptiness, sadness becomes a teacher, showing you impermanence, compassion, and the value of connection. Over time, emptiness itself becomes a refuge. When life feels overwhelming, you can return to the quiet space within, to the stillness that underlies all things. Instead of filling it with noise, you rest in it. Instead of fearing it, you embrace it. And in that embrace, you realize that emptiness is not loneliness, it is vastness. It is not absence, it is openness. It is not death, it is renewal. The fruit of this practice is profound freedom. When you stop fearing emptiness, you stop running from life. You stop clinging to things to fill the void. You stop defining yourself by what you have or lack. Instead, you discover a deeper identity, spacious, free, unbound. Sadness may still visit, loneliness may still ache, but they no longer terrify you because you know how to sit with emptiness until it becomes your teacher. So when you feel hollow, when the silence feels unbearable, when sadness and loneliness leave you empty, do not run. Sit, breathe, allow the emptiness, look into it with courage. With time, you will see that emptiness is not your enemy. It is the doorway to peace, the ground of freedom, the place where life begins again. To sit with emptiness until it becomes your teacher is to transform fear into wisdom, loneliness into spaciousness, sadness into openness. It is to discover that what you once saw as a void is in fact the vast sky of your being, untouched, unbroken, infinite. And in that realization, you find the peace that sadness tried to hide, the connection that loneliness tried to deny, and the fullness that emptiness was waiting to reveal. 22. Walk the path of patience, trusting the slow unfolding of healing. When sadness clings to the heart and loneliness wraps itself around the soul, one of the hardest things to bear is the length of time it takes to heal. The mind, restless and impatient, whispers, "Why am I still feeling this way? Why is my sadness not gone yet? Why does loneliness remain even after I've tried so hard to overcome it?" This impatience is itself a form of suffering. It adds a second burden to the pain you already carry, convincing you that something is wrong simply because healing is not instant. Buddhism teaches that one of the most profound virtues on the spiritual path is patience, known in Sanskrit as karmanti. Patience is not passive resignation or weak surrender. It is active strength, the ability to stay steady in the face of difficulty, to trust the slow unfolding of life, to endure without bitterness. Patience does not mean you stop caring about healing. It means you stop demanding that healing obey your timeline. It means you trust that just as winter slowly turns into spring, your sorrow too will gradually turn into wisdom, your loneliness into deeper connection, your wounds into compassion. Why is patience so essential in times of sadness and loneliness? Because both are slow teachers. They do not vanish with a single breath, nor do they yield their lessons overnight. Sadness often carries messages about what you value most, about love, about loss, about impermanence. Loneliness often teaches you about your need for connection, not only with others, but with yourself, with life, with the present. These lessons cannot be rushed. Like seeds buried in the soil, they must unfold in their own time. Impatience only digs up the soil again and again, preventing the seed from sprouting. Patience allows the seed to rest, to grow unseen, to eventually break through the surface into light. Think of the bamboo plant. When bamboo is first planted, it spends years growing roots underground, invisible to the eye. During this time, it looks as though nothing is happening. But then, once the roots are strong, it suddenly shoots up, growing rapidly into the sky. Sadness and loneliness often work in the same way. For long periods, it may feel as though nothing is changing, as though you are stuck. But beneath the surface, roots are growing: strength, resilience, understanding, compassion. When the time is right, these roots support sudden growth. Patience is what allows you to trust this hidden process. Patience also softens self-judgment. When sadness lingers, you may blame yourself. "I should be over this by now. Others would have healed faster. There must be something wrong with me." But patience teaches you that healing has no universal timeline. Each heart unfolds at its own pace, shaped by unique causes and conditions. To compare yourself to others is like comparing the blossoming of roses and lotuses. Each flower blooms in its own season. Each has its own rhythm. Patience allows you to honor your rhythm without shame. How can you cultivate patience in the midst of sorrow? The first step is to breathe and pause whenever impatience arises. Notice the urge to escape, to force change, to demand quick relief. Instead of following it, place a hand on your chest and say softly, "This too takes time. I allow myself to heal slowly." These words may feel uncomfortable at first, but they plant seeds of acceptance. Over time, they remind you that slowness is not failure. It is part of the natural rhythm of life. Another practice is to reflect on the seasons. Notice how winter does not rush into spring, how spring does not hurry into summer. Each unfolds gently in its own time, guided by the laws of nature. Your heart, too, follows seasons. Sadness may be your winter, loneliness your autumn. They feel cold, empty and long. But patience assures you spring will come, warmth will return, flowers will bloom again. You cannot control the timing, but you can trust the unfolding. Patience also grows when you learn to sit with small discomforts. For example, when you feel restless during meditation, instead of shifting immediately, stay for a few breaths longer. When you feel the urge to check your phone for distraction, pause for a few seconds before acting. These small acts train the mind to stay steady instead of rushing. Over time, this strength expands to larger challenges, allowing you to sit with sadness and loneliness without panic. It is important to see that patience is not passive waiting. It is active engagement with the present. It is choosing to remain open, curious, and gentle with what is here, rather than fighting it or trying to escape it. In patience you say, I will walk this path step by step. I do not need to run. I do not need to arrive today. I trust the journey. This trust itself brings peace, because it releases you from the impossible demand of instant transformation. There is a story in Buddhist tradition of a monk who asked his teacher, "How long will it take me to reach enlightenment?" The teacher replied, 10 years. The monk, eager, said, "And if I work very hard, if I meditate day and night, how long then?" The teacher smiled and said, 20 years. The monk was confused. The teacher explained, "If you are always rushing, always impatient, you will never be still enough to see clearly. But if you walk steadily, patiently, you will arrive." The same is true of healing. Impatience makes the path longer. Patience shortens it, because it allows clarity and peace to arise naturally. Patience also changes the way you relate to loneliness. Without patience, loneliness feels unbearable, like a hunger that must be filled immediately. This urgency often drives people into unhealthy connections, relationships born not from love, but from fear of being alone. But with patience, you can sit with loneliness without rushing to fill it. You can allow yourself to explore its lessons, to understand its roots, to gradually cultivate deeper, healthier connections. Patience transforms loneliness from a curse into a teacher. In sadness, patience allows you to face grief gently. Loss does not heal in days or weeks. Sometimes it takes months, years, even a lifetime. But patience assures you that the intensity will soften. The raw wound will scar over. The tears will become less frequent. The memories will turn from knives into gentle reminders. By being patient, you allow grief to move at its own pace, instead of demanding that it disappear before it is ready. The fruit of patience is resilience. When you cultivate patience, you no longer break easily under sorrow. You can endure discomfort without collapsing. You can walk slowly through long nights, trusting that dawn will come. Patience makes you strong, not because it removes pain, but because it gives you the ability to carry it with grace. Another gift of patience is compassion for others. When you see how long your own healing takes, you stop judging others for theirs. You realize that everyone is walking their own slow path. This understanding deepens your kindness, because you know from experience how difficult it is to wait, to endure, to heal. In this way, your patience becomes a gift not only to yourself, but also to the world. So when sadness lingers longer than you want, when loneliness feels endless, remember this: healing is not a race. It is a path. Each step matters. Each moment of patience is itself part of healing. Place your hand on your heart and whisper, "I allow myself the time I need. I trust the slow unfolding of life." To walk the path of patience is to align yourself with the rhythm of the universe. It is to trust that just as rivers carve valleys, just as seeds become trees, just as night becomes day, your sorrow too will transform in its own time. With patience, you discover that you do not need to rush toward peace. Peace is already walking beside you, step by step, as long as you do not run ahead or fall behind. We have walked a long path together, through the breath, through mindfulness, through compassion, through patience, through silence, through emptiness, through the wisdom of impermanence and the strength of equanimity. Each practice has offered a lantern, a gentle light in the dark corridors of sadness and loneliness. Perhaps as you listened or read, you noticed something changing, not always a sudden transformation, but a quiet softening, a subtle loosening of the grip sadness has on your heart. That is the way of the Dharma. It does not always roar like thunder. Sometimes it arrives like a whisper, reminding you of what you already knew deep within. The truth is this: sadness and loneliness are not mistakes in your life. They are not punishments, nor are they signs of weakness. They are part of the human experience, part of what it means to live with a tender, open heart in a world of impermanence. Every being who has walked the earth has known sadness. Every heart has felt the ache of loneliness. Even the Buddha himself sat under the Bodhi tree because he knew suffering. He did not run from it, he faced it, and in facing it, he discovered liberation. What we forget in our darkest moments is that we are not broken. Sadness may cover the heart, but beneath it there is stillness, spaciousness, clarity. Loneliness may ache in the chest, but beneath it there is connection to the breath, to the earth, to the vast web of life that never leaves you. The practices you have explored are not tools to erase sadness and loneliness, but doorways to walk through them, to see them clearly, to transform them into teachers. Think of each practice as a seed. Some seeds sprout quickly. Perhaps you already felt relief just by watching your breath. Others grow slowly. Patience, equanimity, self-acceptance may take time to root in the soil of your heart. But all seeds grow if you tend them with attention, with care, with love. Each time you sit quietly, each time you notice joy in small things, each time you offer compassion to yourself or to others, you are watering these seeds. And little by little, they will grow into a garden of peace within you. The mind often asks, how long will this take? When will I finally be free of sadness, free of loneliness? But freedom is not a finish line. It is not a day in the future when everything suddenly disappears. Freedom is here, in this moment, when you stop resisting what is, when you breathe with it, when you soften your grip, when you remember that nothing lasts forever. The path is not about erasing your humanity. It is about embracing it fully, with all its storms and all its sunlight. If there is one truth I hope you carry from this journey, it is this: you are not alone. Even when you feel abandoned, even when your room is empty, even when no one seems to understand, still, you are not alone. The trees breathe with you, the earth holds you, the stars shine for you. The universe itself flows through your breath, through your body, through your very awareness. You are never separate. You belong to this great unfolding of life, as much as the rivers, as much as the mountains, as much as the sun and the moon. Loneliness tries to convince you otherwise. It whispers, you are cut off, you do not belong. But the practices you have learned reveal the truth. You belong to everything. You belong to silence and stillness. You belong to the present moment. You belong to compassion and love. You belong to the great dance of impermanence. And most importantly, you belong to yourself. When you accept yourself fully, when you become your own refuge, loneliness loses its sharpest edge, because even if no one else is near, you are near, and that is enough. Sadness, too, loses its power when you stop resisting it. When you breathe with it, when you let it flow, when you see it as temporary, it becomes less of an enemy and more of a guide. Sadness shows you what you value, what you love, what matters to you. It deepens your compassion for others, it softens your heart, and though it hurts, it also transforms. No sadness lasts forever. Every storm passes, and when it does, the air is clearer, the sky more open, the heart stronger. The way to peace is not in fighting your sadness, not in running from your loneliness, not in filling the void with distractions. The way to peace is in turning toward yourself gently, in breathing with what is here, in trusting the natural rhythm of life. The practices of Buddhism are not escape, they are presence. They teach you to meet life exactly as it is, without clinging, without resisting, with a heart that is steady, open, and compassionate. As you leave this journey of words, know that your journey of practice continues. Every day offers you opportunities to return to your breath, to silence, to compassion, to patience, to equanimity, to joy in small things, to the wisdom of impermanence, to the vast spaciousness of emptiness. Do not feel pressured to practice all at once. Choose one or two that speak to your heart, and begin there. Let them become part of your daily rhythm. With time, they will weave themselves into your being, becoming natural, effortless, alive. And when sadness returns, as it will, welcome it gently. Say, I see you. You are here for now. You are not forever. And when loneliness visits, sit with it softly. Say, I feel you. You remind me of my longing for connection, but I am not separate. I am part of life itself. In this way, even your darkest visitors become teachers, guiding you back to the peace that was within you all along. The conclusion, then, is not an ending. It is a reminder of what was true from the beginning. You already carry the seeds of peace within you. You already have the capacity to breathe, to accept, to let go, to love, to be present. Sadness and loneliness may cloud the sky for a time, but they cannot destroy the sky itself. And you are the sky, vast, open, unbroken. May you walk gently with yourself. May you trust the slow unfolding of healing. May you see the small joys, the everyday miracles. May you accept your humanity fully, with tenderness. May you discover the strength of impermanence, the calm of equanimity, the peace of letting go. And above all, may you remember, in moments of sadness and loneliness, that you are never truly alone. You belong to life, and life belongs to you. This is the way to peace, and it has always been here, inside your very breath, waiting for you to notice. The practice of compassion begins with awareness. When you see someone suffering, notice your instinctive reaction. Do you turn away? Do you judge them? Or do you open your heart and ask, how can I help? Compassion does not always mean solving the problem. Sometimes it is as simple as listening fully, as being present, as offering kindness without conditions. Compassion is not measured in size, but in sincerity. A small act of true compassion can change a life. But compassion must also include yourself. Many people are kind to others but harsh to themselves. They forgive others but condemn themselves. They speak gently to friends but cruelly to their own hearts. This imbalance creates suffering because compassion without self-compassion is incomplete. To truly walk the path of compassion, you must extend the same kindness to yourself that you would to a loved one. When you make mistakes, forgive. When you suffer, comfort yourself. When you are tired, allow rest. Compassion for yourself is not selfish. It is the foundation that allows you to sustain compassion for others. Meditation offers a direct practice for this loving kindness or metta-meditation. In this practice you repeat phrases of goodwill, first for yourself, then for others, then for all beings. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be free. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free. At first it may feel mechanical, but over time your heart softens. You begin to feel warmth not only for yourself, but for strangers, for enemies, for the entire world. This is the power of compassion. It expands the heart until it includes everything. Compassion also transforms relationships. When you interact with others without compassion, every conflict becomes a battle of egos. But when you bring compassion, you see beyond the surface. You recognize that their anger is rooted in pain, that their cruelty is rooted in ignorance, that their fear is rooted in suffering. This does not excuse their actions, but it allows you to respond with understanding instead of retaliation. Compassion turns enemies into teachers, conflicts into opportunities, and relationships into paths of growth. The world itself is healed through compassion. Wars, injustice, exploitation, these are born from greed, hatred, and ignorance. Compassion is the antidote. It reminds us that no nation, no race, no group is separate from another, that the suffering of one is the suffering of all. When compassion becomes the guiding principle of society, peace follows. The Buddha once said that if a person truly practiced compassion for even one day, they would bring more benefit to the world than 100 years of rituals without compassion. This is the measure of its power. But compassion is not always easy. It is easy to be compassionate when others are kind, but what about when they are cruel? It is easy to love when others love you, but what about when they reject you? True compassion is tested in difficulty. This is why it must be cultivated, practiced, strengthened like a muscle. Each time you choose compassion over resentment, you grow stronger. Each time you forgive, you free yourself. Each time you open your heart when it wants to close, you move closer to liberation. Compassion also protects you from despair. The suffering of the world can feel overwhelming. Wars, poverty, cruelty, destruction. It can crush your spirit if you face it without compassion. But compassion transforms despair into action. It gives you the courage to do what you can, where you are, without drowning in hopelessness. You cannot solve all suffering, but you can relieve some. And in doing so, you discover that your life has meaning, not in grand achievements, but in small acts of kindness that ripple outward. Think of a candle. When it lights another candle, it does not lose its flame, it doubles it. Compassion works the same way. The more you give, the more you have. The more you share, the brighter the world becomes. Compassion does not deplete you, it expands you, and in that expansion, you discover joy far deeper than selfish pleasure. Ultimately, compassion frees you because it dissolves the illusion of a separate self. When you see yourself in others, when you feel their suffering as your own, when you act to relieve it, you transcend the prison of ego. You become vast, limitless, boundless. The Buddha called this boundless compassion, a state where the heart embraces all beings without limit. In this boundlessness, you are no longer trapped in the narrow cage of me and mine. You are free. So remember this, compassion is not just kindness, it is liberation. It is not weakness, it is strength. It is not loss, it is gain. Each time you choose compassion, you drop the heavy burden of anger and fear. Each time you choose compassion, you step closer to peace. Each time you choose compassion, you free yourself by freeing others. The path of compassion is the path of the awakened heart. Walk it, and you will discover a freedom far deeper than control, far greater than pleasure, far stronger than fear. Walk it, and you will discover that in giving you receive. In forgiving you are healed. In opening your heart, you finally find the peace you have been seeking all along. The joy of simplicity, why living with less brings true freedom. In every corner of modern life, we are taught that more equals better. More possessions, more achievements, more recognition, more noise. We chase after fullness, as if peace were something to be purchased or accumulated. Yet the more we add, the heavier life becomes. Our homes are cluttered, Our schedules are overcrowded, our minds are restless, our hearts are suffocated by the endless pursuit of more. The Buddha offered a different path, one that seems radical in today's world. True joy is not found in adding, but in subtracting. Freedom is not in carrying more, but in carrying less. Happiness does not come from excess, but from simplicity. Simplicity is not poverty, nor is it deprivation. It is not about rejecting life's beauty or denying its pleasures. Simplicity is the art of living only with what matters, letting go of what does not. It is the wisdom of knowing that peace does not require endless possessions, and that freedom is not found in constant consumption. Simplicity is clarity. It is space. It is the ability to breathe again in a world drowning in excess. Consider your mind. How often is it cluttered with unnecessary worries, distractions, comparisons, desires? You chase 10 different goals at once, juggle endless responsibilities, scroll through a flood of noise every day. This mental clutter steals your peace. Simplicity of mind means letting go of what does not serve you. It means focusing on what is essential, what truly matters. Just as a room becomes calmer when it is cleared, the mind becomes peaceful when it is freed from excess. Simplicity is not emptiness, it is spaciousness, the space in which joy can breathe. The same is true with possessions. How much of what you own truly adds value to your life? How much simply fills space, demanding your attention, your energy, your worry? The more you own, the more you are owned. You spend your time maintaining, protecting, ensuring, organizing, worrying. Buddhism teaches that clinging to possessions creates suffering, not because possessions are evil, but because they cannot bring lasting peace. The joy of simplicity is in releasing what you do not need, so you can cherish what you do. A single meaningful object brings more joy than 1,000 meaningless ones. Simplicity also transforms relationships. Many conflicts arise because of ego, pride, competition, endless demands. When you simplify your heart, you stop demanding so much from others. You love them as they are, without needing them to fulfill every desire. You speak more honestly, you listen more fully, you connect more deeply. Simplicity in love means removing the clutter of expectations and returning to the essence, presence, kindness, compassion. The most meaningful moments in relationships are often the simplest: sharing a meal, sitting in silence, holding hands, laughing together. Love does not need extravagance to be real. In daily life, simplicity is a practice of mindfulness. When you eat, eat simply. When you walk, walk simply. When you rest, rest simply. You do not need constant distraction, constant multitasking, constant stimulation. One act, done fully, is enough. Simplicity returns you to presence, where joy is always waiting. The Buddha himself lived simply, not because he rejected life, but because he understood that freedom requires space. When you carry little, you walk lightly. When you demand little, you live peacefully. The world often tells you that your worth is measured by how much you own, how much you achieve, how much you display. But simplicity reveals the opposite. Your worth is not in what you add, but in what you are. When the noise is stripped away, when the clutter is removed, when the unnecessary is released, what remains is your true self, clear, free, radiant. Simplicity is the path back to that essence. Nature teaches this beautifully. Look at a tree. It does not need ornaments or decorations to be magnificent. Its simplicity is its strength. Look at the sky. It does not need to prove itself with endless colors. The vastness itself is enough. Look at water. It is clear, simple, humble, and yet it sustains all life. Nature does not strive for excess, yet it thrives. Simplicity is not lack. It is fullness without clutter. Simplicity also reveals gratitude. When you stop chasing more, You begin to appreciate what is already here. You taste your food more deeply. You notice the beauty of a single flower, a single smile, a single breath. When life is cluttered, gratitude is buried. When life is simple, gratitude blooms, and gratitude itself is joy. The Buddha said that contentment is the greatest wealth. Simplicity is the soil in which contentment grows. Even suffering is lightened by simplicity. Much of our pain comes not from what happens, but from the layers we add on top, overthinking, overreacting, overcomplicating. Simplicity removes those layers. It allows you to face challenges directly, without extra weight. A simple heart meets life with clarity. This is what is happening. This is how I can respond. Simplicity does not erase suffering, but it prevents unnecessary suffering. In meditation, simplicity is everything. You sit, you breathe, you notice. Nothing fancy, nothing complex. Just this moment, just this breath. The mind resists simplicity at first, craving distraction. But as you surrender, you discover that simplicity is vast. The simplest breath contains infinite peace. The simplest silence contains infinite wisdom. The simplest presence contains infinite freedom. Meditation is the practice of rediscovering this truth. At first, living simply may feel uncomfortable because you are conditioned to equate excess with happiness, but with practice, you begin to see that less truly is more. Less distraction means more focus. Less clutter means more clarity. Less craving means more peace. Simplicity is not deprivation. It is liberation. It frees you from the chains of endless wanting, from the burden of excess, from the illusion that you are incomplete. In simplicity, you discover that you already have enough. You are already enough. The joy of simplicity is not about numbers, it is about essence. You may live in a grand house or a humble room. What matters is not how much you own, but how lightly you hold. You may have many responsibilities or very few. What matters is not how much you do, but how fully you do it. Simplicity is not uniform, it is unique to each person, but its fruit is always the same. Peace, clarity, freedom. So remember this, happiness is not waiting in the next possession, the next achievement, the next addition. It is here, hidden beneath the clutter, waiting to be uncovered. The more you let go, the more you see, the more you simplify, the more you live. The joy of simplicity is not in having less, it is in being free. Free to breathe, free to love, free to live without chains. Walk the path of simplicity, and you will discover a truth deeper than all the noise. Life itself, in its purest form, is already enough. The silence within, discovering power beyond words. If there is one thing the modern world fears the most, it is silence. We surround ourselves with constant noise, conversations, notifications, entertainment, endless distractions. The moment silence appears, we rush to fill it. We reach for our phones, turn on the television, start speaking, even when there is nothing to say. Silence has become uncomfortable, almost unbearable. Yet Buddhism teaches that silence is not emptiness. It is power. It is not absence. It is presence. Silence is the gateway to clarity, to wisdom, to peace. It is within silence that you hear the truth of life, because silence is the language of reality itself. The mind fears silence because, in silence, all its distractions are stripped away. Without noise, you are left with yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, your truth. Many people avoid silence not because they dislike quiet, but because they fear what they will discover within it. They fear the unresolved wounds that rise to the surface. They fear the questions they cannot answer. They fear the emptiness that feels like a void. But the void is not empty. It is full. It is full of awareness, full of presence, full of the very life we keep running from. To sit in silence is to sit face to face with reality, and for many that is the most courageous act of all. Buddhism has always placed silence at the heart of practice. The Buddha himself often taught more through his silence than through his words. There are stories of disciples asking him profound questions, only for the Buddha to remain quiet. His silence was not avoidance, it was wisdom. Sometimes words can only point to truth, but silence allows truth to reveal itself. Words divide, interpret, and limit. Silence embraces, reveals, and transcends. Think of a lake. When the surface is disturbed, it reflects nothing clearly, but when the lake is still, it mirrors the sky, the trees, the world in perfect clarity. Your mind is the same. When filled with noise, it cannot see reality as it is. But in silence, the mind becomes still, and truth reflects itself clearly. This is why meditation is rooted in silence, not silence of the world outside, but silence of the heart within. Silence also deepens relationships. In our culture, we often believe that connection requires constant words, that silence between people is awkward, but the deepest connections are often wordless. Sitting with someone in quiet presence, without needing to fill the space, creates intimacy beyond language. True love, true friendship, true compassion do not always need words, they need presence. Silence allows that presence to expand. In daily life, silence is just as powerful. When you pause before reacting, silence saves you from anger. When you listen without interrupting, silence allows others to be heard. When you refrain from needless chatter, silence preserves your energy. Silence is not passive, it is active wisdom. It creates space for clarity, for compassion, for thoughtful action. Without silence, life becomes frantic, reactive, shallow. With silence, life becomes mindful, grounded, deep. The ego resists silence because it thrives on noise. The ego says, if I am not speaking, I am not important. If I am not filling the air, I will be forgotten. But this is an illusion. Silence is not weakness, it is strength. It is often the silent one who holds the greatest power in the room. It is the quiet leader whose presence commands respect. It is the person who speaks little but wisely, whose words carry weight. Noise is cheap, silence is priceless. Even spiritually, silence is essential. The truths the Buddha pointed to, the truths of impermanence, suffering, non-self, cannot be fully captured in words. They must be experienced directly, in silence. When you sit in meditation, when you allow the noise to settle, you begin to glimpse these truths for yourself. You begin to see that beneath all the thoughts, all the emotions, all the noise, there is a stillness that has always been there. This stillness is not created, it is uncovered. It is the silence within you, the silence that is your true nature. At first, silence may feel uncomfortable. The restless mind will scream, demanding distraction. But if you stay, if you breathe, if you allow, you begin to soften. Slowly, the fear dissolves. Slowly, silence becomes a friend. And then, slowly, silence becomes home. In silence, you find rest deeper than sleep. In silence, you find peace deeper than pleasure. In silence, you find yourself. The power of silence also lies in what it teaches you about impermanence. When you are silent, you begin to notice the arising and passing of sounds, thoughts, sensations. You see how nothing lingers, how everything moves. This seeing softens your grip on life. You stop clinging so tightly, because you realize nothing is permanent anyway. Silence becomes a teacher, showing you directly what words can only describe. Silence also reveals compassion. When you are silent, you listen more. You notice the pain in another's eyes, the heaviness in their voice, the truth behind their words. In silence, You become receptive, open, compassionate. You stop trying to dominate conversations with your story, and you start honoring the stories of others. Silence allows you to hold space for suffering, for healing, for love. But silence is not only external, it is internal. True silence is not about escaping noise, but about discovering quiet within, even in the middle of chaos. You can be in a busy street, a noisy home, a loud world, and still be silent inside. This is the real power, to carry stillness with you, to be a calm center in the middle of storms. The world will never be free of noise, but you can always be free within it. So how do you practice silence? Begin with small steps. Turn off distractions for a few minutes each day. Sit quietly without reaching for your phone. Listen fully when someone speaks, without planning your reply. Spend time in nature, where silence is alive, in the wind, the trees, the water. And above all, practice meditation, where silence reveals itself as your own true nature. In time, silence will stop being something to fear and will become something to cherish. You will begin to seek it, to crave it, to honor it. You will discover that silence is not empty. It is full, full of peace, full of clarity, full of truth. You will discover that silence is not weakness. It is strength. Strength to hold back anger, strength to listen deeply, strength to live with wisdom. You will discover that silence is not absence. It is presence. Presence deeper than words. Presence that connects you to life itself. So remember this: the world will always be noisy, but beneath that noise within you, silence is waiting. It has always been there, and it always will be. When you discover it, you will realize that silence is not something to escape to, it is something you carry. It is your home, your refuge, your strength, and in that silence, you will find a peace no amount of words could ever give you. We began this journey exploring the ways we exhaust ourselves, by forcing, by clinging, by endlessly wrestling with shadows of fear and desire. Each lesson has been a doorway, guiding us deeper into the truth that Buddhism has taught for centuries. Peace is not something you chase. It is something you uncover when you stop resisting life as it is. To stop trying so hard is not to abandon effort. It is to transform effort into ease, to align with the natural rhythm of existence, instead of endlessly fighting against it. Look back at the lessons, and you will see a single thread weaving through them all: surrender, balance, stillness, compassion, acceptance, presence, simplicity. They are not separate paths, but different ways of describing the same truth. Life flows naturally when you let it. Suffering arises when you cling, when you force, when you demand. Freedom arises when you release, when you allow, when you trust. The path is not about becoming someone else. It is about remembering who you already are beneath the noise. We saw that fighting shadows of the mind only makes them grow darker, that clarity comes when you stop wrestling with illusions and return to the present. We discovered that forcing time, forcing relationships, forcing outcomes only leads to breaking, that gentleness, patience, and trust carry more strength than control ever could. We learned that silence is not empty, that impermanence is not our enemy, that balance is not weakness, that compassion is not sacrifice. All of these are invitations to live differently, not with desperation, but with presence. The truth is, life was never meant to be controlled. The river flows whether you resist it or not. The seasons change whether you approve or not. The body ages, relationships shift, opportunities come and go. You cannot stop change. You cannot freeze reality. But you can stop breaking yourself against what is. You can learn to float. You can learn to walk in balance. You can learn to breathe deeply in silence, to love without chains, to live without endless noise. This is the art of flowing with life. Simplicity, too, is a key. In a world drowning in excess, to live simply is revolutionary. It is to say, I do not need to carry so much to feel complete. I do not need to own so much to feel rich. I do not need to force so much to feel alive. When you live simply, gratitude awakens. When gratitude awakens, joy blooms. And when joy blooms, you realize you were never lacking. It was only the clutter that blinded you. Presence is another pillar of freedom. All your suffering lives in the past and future. But life, real life, exists only now. This moment, this breath, this heartbeat. The more you return to it, the more the illusions dissolve. Fear softens, anger dissolves, longing fades. In presence, everything is enough. In presence, you are free. The Buddha's path has always been called the middle way because it avoids extremes. Not indulgence, not denial, not clinging, not rejecting, not forcing, not abandoning. The middle way is balance, and balance is freedom, because it means you are no longer enslaved to extremes. You walk steady, you walk light, you walk in harmony with life. And perhaps the deepest truth of all is compassion. When you open your heart to others, you discover that suffering is not just yours. Everyone you meet is carrying something. Everyone you meet is wrestling with impermanence. Compassion dissolves the illusion of separation. It frees you from hatred, from resentment, from loneliness. It connects you to the whole of life. To be compassionate is not only to heal others, it is to heal yourself. Because in helping them, you dissolve the barriers that keep you trapped in ego. You remember that you are not alone. You never were. So where does this leave us? With an invitation. An invitation to live differently, to stop exhausting yourself with forcing, to stop breaking under clinging, to stop drowning in noise, to stop fearing change, to stop postponing peace. You do not need to run so hard. You do not need to grip so tightly. You do not need to carry so much. You only need to return again and again to the natural flow, to trust the river, to breathe in silence, to act with balance, to live with compassion, to be present. The journey is not about becoming perfect. It is not about reaching some distant finish line of enlightenment. It is about practicing here and now in small ways, breathing deeply when the mind races, letting go gently when clinging arises, choosing silence instead of needless words, offering compassion instead of judgment, walking the middle path when extremes tempt you, living simply instead of chasing endlessly. Each small practice is a return to the flow, and each return is freedom. Remember this, life does not ask you to force it. The grass grows without your pushing. The sun rises without your command. Your heart beats without your control. Life is already flowing, already carrying you. All it asks is that you stop fighting and start trusting. When you stop trying so hard, life stops feeling so hard. When you release, you are released. When you flow, you are free. So take a breath, let the noise fall away, feel the silence within you, let go of what you cannot hold, trust what you cannot see. Be here, be now, be free.